So I value the relationship. I asked them, what do you need from me? How can I bring things to you? You never know the potential of a contact. You have to know every contact could take you to some place that...
I'm curious, what are the 3 things that poor people do that rich people don't do? Or you can reverse it. What are 3 things rich people do that poor people don't do?
Well, I can tell you, they have the intuition of how they judge people, because everything is about the whole intuition part, right? You're sitting there, who you choose to befriend, who you choose to have relationships with, you know, and how you water those relationships. Because if you want to have a relationship together and it's just take, nothing's going to happen. I remember I'm a 24-year-old kid. I don't know nothing about business. I've done some stuff in sales, but I really don't know nothing about business. I'm a 22-year-old kid. I go and I take this guy, I go to a job interview at the advertising group. Shout out to Jamie Hepp. And I watch this guy. He interviews me. I'm at that time working at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, but I'm trying to see what else I want to do. Okay, so I got started the day before 9/11, but I'm still interviewing. I sit with him in the interview, and the way he interviewed me, I sat there and I said, I will never work for this company because it's just not what I want to do, because they were selling Xerox machines and business to business. I said, but I want to have a relationship with you. I said, do you mind if I get your business card? He said, yeah, sure. I said, okay, great. So he gives me his business card. Year and a half later, I get a job. I'm doing good at this point. I'm making some income, 23 years old. I call him up and I said, Jamie, you don't remember me, but I want to take you out to lunch and I want to pick your brain if you don't mind. I told you a year and a half ago that I wanted to do this with you. And you said, yes. He says, great, let's do it. So we go to Macaroni Grill, somewhere in Culver City, right around here, like Victory, Overland, somewhere around that area. So we go there. He brings this drop-dead gorgeous girl that works for him. I think her name is Natalia or Natasha or something with N, right? And she's beautiful. Short skirt, perfect legs, flawless, beautiful face. She's sitting right there, and I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to woo me to go be one of his sales guys. And I said, look, with all due respect, you're beautiful, but I have no interest in you. My interest is in you. Is it fair if we just talk business for an hour? He says, yes. So I went, okay? Now, at this point, he's making $1 million. I'm making 50 grand a year. I'm a nobody, okay? We have lunch again. I'm taking notes. I offer to pay. He doesn't let me pay. He pays. He says, I got it. No problem. When I leave, I send him a book. We had this meeting that we did every 3 to 6 months together at this restaurant, Argentinian restaurant called Bamboo, which they had this beautiful soup. Every time we would have dinner with him or we'd go to lunch, I would always send him a book. 10 years later, he says, every time I meet with Patrick, a book is on its way, okay? So I value the relationship. I asked him, what do you need from me? How can I bring things to you? Years later, he gives me one referral. That one referral he gave me helped me open up Florida. If he doesn't give me that referral, that Florida office wouldn't have been opened up, right? One contact opens up a whole state, okay? So another relationship I can tell you about is I was going to churches and I said, let me see what's going to happen with these churches. And I'm going to churches and I'm going to these different places. And I'm studying Scientology. I'm studying LDS. I'm studying Jehovah, Judaism. I'm studying everything. At this point in the game, I was obsessed with religion. So all I want to do is study everything about religion, right? And I'm 24, 25. I eventually find this church called Shepherd of the Hills, which is ran by a guy named Dudley Rutherford. And I go to this place. And I'm an atheist, so it's not like I'm going in there. I'm just trying to see what's going on over here. I'm just trying to learn. I'm not trying to do it. I go to this place and I'm like, okay, I like this guy's style. You typically go to church. If you don't do this, you're going to hell. And I'm like, dude, I don't need to know I'm going to hell. I know I'm going to hell. I just want to know I have a shot in heaven. You know what I'm saying? So this guy's energy was, you have a shot at heaven, right? I'm like, okay, cool. All right. How much? This might try out. I feel a little better, right? I know the screw-ups what I've done in my life. Let me see, maybe I got a shot over here. So I go there, and I'm sitting in the back. I watch him once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. I'm like, wow, I like this guy. So then I sent him an email, a little bit of an arrogant email, but I'll tell you what the email was. I sent him an email and I said, listen, my name is Patrick David. You don't know who I am, but I'm going to be somebody in the world. And I know you are somebody in the world, but I promise you, if you give me your time, I will always bring value to you. Wow. It will not be a waste of your time, okay? I'm not doing anything at that time at 25. I got a small little office operation, nothing crazy. We go have a lunch together at Black Angus off Canoga or Topanga. We go to Black Angus, we sit down, we talk. After the meeting is over with, I said, what can I do for you? Nothing there. We go out again, what can I do for you? Nothing there, what can I do for you? Nothing there. Eventually, he says something happened with my son at Moore Park basketball, And I made a phone call to the coach, and I spoke to the guy, and anonymously, because I didn't like the way this whole situation was handled. He probably doesn't even know the story. I know the people may know, but he may not even know the story. So I make the phone call. We get closer. He marries my wife. We change our wedding to Friday. It was set up on Saturday to Friday so he can wed us. Anyways, in 2008, 2008, he introduces me to Tom Ellsworth. You know how I talked about Tom earlier? He introduced me to Tom, okay? And Tom comes, okay? In 2009, he introduced me to Matt Sapala. Matt Sapala and Sheena, I got introduced to 09. They just got promoted this last week at West Palm Beach to the Chief Distribution Officer, PHP, right? He is now the CDO, okay? We've paid him in the first 6 months of the year over $1 million. They're doing very good at what they do in the business here. But if I don't have that contact and I water him what his needs are, not what I can take, if I give the needs I don't have those contacts. So I think too many times when, you build a relationship with somebody, it's immediately, what can I do, what can I, and by the way,
what can I get from you?
Yeah, and I remember how you were the first time we met. When we were done, you and I went to Earth Cafe with Jen, and I think we even went and looked at some furniture, and there was like a Google shop that we went there. I don't know if you remember that, right across from Earth Cafe. And you said, Pat, how can I help you? What do you need from me? What can I do for you?
It was on the corner after
exactly.
We walked out.
Exactly. So we walked around, babe, she said, yeah, I really like this Lewis guy. I don't like this approach, how he is. That's the dynamic that you don't see behind closed doors. People may see School of Greatness, people may see the books, but behind closed doors, the context is about what can I do for you. So you asked 3 things. I'd say the biggest one is figure out ways to strengthen relationships and take them deeper, because you never know. Just like everybody thinks you're, one sale away or one opportunity away, you're one contact away from your life changing. If you start valuing your contact like a book of business, everything changes.
That's true. What I heard you say there was intuition, study, and relationships.
Sure, yeah.
Does that cover those kind of 3 things? And I think when you think about people that aren't making the money that they want and don't have a rich life, whether that be quality of life, they probably aren't discerning their decisions and being intuitive about who they should spend time with. They aren't researching more ideas and expanding their mind, and they aren't giving in those relationships. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think sometimes it's also not knowing what something could lead into. A guy one time came into Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, on a Harley Davidson bike, and he had tattoos, and he looked rough, very rough. No advisor would take him. He says, I'm looking for an advisor. No advisor would take this guy. Yeah, I need an advisor. And they're like, oh, there's a bank downstairs.
A financial advisor.
Financial advisor. Well, Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, Glendale, no one wants to take this guy.
Like, this guy's got no money.
Yeah, so the guy comes out, he sees, he says, oh, just give him to somebody else. I'm good. The guy in the corner office that has a couple $100 million under management, he leaves. Then the new guy takes him. Then the guy comes, I have $50 million to invest. He got an inheritance. That one account was $50 million.
Changed his life.
Changed his life.
Yeah.
And he put the 50, and the rookie broker got a $50 million money under management. You're getting 1 or 2 points on that. Life changing. So the
for
point
life.
For life.
Every year.
Every year. Generational wealth. We're not talking about like a small thing here. So you can't just sit there and look at relationships that you never know the potential of a contact. You have to know every contact could take you to some place that you don't know. It's like a movie. You don't know the next scene. So you can't just assume what that contact's going to lead into.
Yeah.
Sometimes the smallest contact can lead into something big.
One of the things I love about you, Patrick, is you remind me of my dad so much and my childhood. My dad, I think I told you, my dad was a life insurance salesman for 32 years until he got into a brain accident. He got in a car crash, and he's still alive today, but he had to stop working. And he also became an entrepreneur, launched the health insurance vertical in conjunction with Northwestern Mutual. And he does everything you do. And my whole business model and just the way that I live is based on what I witnessed him doing. And this was pre-social media, pre-internet.
Wow.
He would just remember names like nobody's business. He was so giving, so thoughtful, and he was always thinking in the long term. He wasn't like, how can I sell you now, but how can I give you now? He would do this every day. He would read the newspaper, and he would cut out the newspaper every day and write long letters and put in envelopes and send it out to people that were clients and people that are not clients. If it was someone's kid in sports that, was, hey, they had their best game ever. Hey, I just wanted to send you this clipping of the newspaper, to just people in the community.
That's on a whole different level, though, man. That's incredible.
Handwritten letters, and just send it to them and say, hey, if I can ever help with anything, let me know.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of old school mentality, but he would always just show up for people, just take meetings to take them, and wasn't always trying to sell, but just trying to serve. And that's really kind of how I built my business early on. Was when I had nothing at all, I was just like, what can I learn from someone, and how can I ask them what they need, and then deliver on that need as fast as possible, and not ask for anything in return. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to grow, is because of the relationship building. You know, Ben, our producer, I met him 9 years ago when he was a student at Columbia Journalism School, getting a master's, right? And he was working on a documentary about handball. I was in handball at that time in New York City and really liked the way he made the documentary and followed his journey over the last 9 years, stayed in touch every year. We needed a head producer to really build our content. And I reached out to him, and the timing right, the sequencing was right, and we had the relationship where it made sense, at least for now. Maybe he leaves at some point, but it's been great so far in the last 4 months. And I think you never know where the relationship will go. Even if it didn't work out, it's still worth building relationships.
No question. Yeah.
Even if we never work together. Because you just never know who that person might introduce you to, who might say your name behind closed doors, where it unlocks some opportunity. You never know. So you remind me a lot of my dad.
Well, that's a big compliment,
yeah.
man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I think if more people came from that place of how can I just care about people and help them solve their problems, you're going to gain a lot back in return long term, whether it's with that person or not. And you talk about money a lot on your show. And you have an amazing video about your top, I think it's your top 20 rules on money. I'm curious, since we're going into the rich-poor conversation, what would you say are the top 3 to 5 rules on money, if you could boil it down to 3 to 5?
It's a game. The number one rule is it's a game. You're playing a game. It's that simple. You know, if you look at it as a game, just like anything, you can get better at it, right? Like whatever game you play. If you play Uno, if you play Monopoly, if you play Clue, if you play
Fortnite.
Jenga, if you play Fortnite, if anything you play, you know, you're gonna get good. I remember in my time, I was playing Fester's Quest. I played Zelda. I used to play Final Fantasy 1, and I would play obviously Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. But it was also what was the Mario Kart? Is it Super Mario Kart? And you know how you would do the 3 jumps and then bam, it's going fast. And I would beat this time 32 seconds. I was so proud of it. But I played it 50,000 times, right? So the game with money, it's exactly what it is. Once you learn how to play the game with money, then it has to do with timing. Then it has to do with different kind of things. Like, you know, a year ago, I get a call from a guy who needs cash. It's okay. So
he needs an investment.
He has something he has to sell immediately to get cash in return, okay? Because he needs the money right away. So I said, okay, so what are you selling? He says, it's the 2 greatest Wayne Gretzky cards. I said, okay.
Signed or unsigned?
No, this is a PSA 10 1979 OPG Topps.
Signature?
No sign, but it's the Holy Grail. So the OPG one sold in 2016 for $453,000. Okay.
Wow.
And just 5 years prior to that, it sold for $92,000. So from $92,000 to $451 in 2016, and he calls me. And a top sold in 2016 for $205,000. So 2 cards combined sold in 2016 for 600 and, you know.
He has them both.
He has them both, and he wants to sell it to me. And I said, okay, what do you want to sell it for?
He's like 600,000.
Yeah, of course he wants to. I said, I'm not going to pay you that. I mean, you know, he wants 650,000. I said, I'm not going to pay you that, but we talked about it. And eventually he gave me a number, right? And it was still a number. I had to still cough up, you know, $500,000 check to the guy. But we met at the PSA headquarters. Classy guy, total gentleman. We sat down. Transaction happened. The CEO of PSA came, showed us the poster on the PSA headquarters. I think it's in Newport. Of the card is on the wall. It's the most expensive hockey card in the world, right? Okay, no problem. So
And you're a hockey fan?
I'm not a hockey fan. I'm an investment guy with hockey. But I've interviewed Wayne Gretzky 6 years ago.
Wow.
So I like greatness. I like anybody that just goes and crushes it with their game, right? So I buy this card. So I buy the card. I don't think much of it.
1 card, not 2.
2 cards. It's both of them. I bought both of them, yeah.
Wow.
So the other guy who owns the card wouldn't sell his card for $1 million if you paid it to him. So here's what I do know.
2 guys own the card.
Me and the other guy. There's only 2 of us. Okay. You paid $1 million, he won't sell it to you. So that means there's only one in the market, because it's me, because I'm willing to sell it, right?
Yeah.
So it's on eBay right now. If you go on eBay right now, you type in Wayne Gretzky OPG, it's on market right now for $1 million, right?
Wow.
The one of them is on the market for $1 million, the other one's on the market for $400,000. So you asked me for a rule of money, I had cash. If I don't have cash like that, I can't double my money that quickly. So we just talked about 3 of them. Money's a game, You need cash because opportunity is going to come up, and it's a doubles game. So if I put
doubles game.
It's a doubles game. Everything about money is a doubles game.
What's that mean?
A doubles game to me is I pay you $1,000. Can we double it in 6 months? No. How long? In 12 months? Okay, no problem. I'll do a double in a year. Here's $1,000. I get a double back, right? So if you take 1,000 and you double it every year, what happens? 1,000 goes into 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 256, 5, 12, $1 million. $1,000 is 9 doubles away from $1 million.
Wow.
Now you take $1 million and see what happens if we double it 9 times. 1 million goes into 2 million, 4 million, 8 million, 16 million, 32, 64, 128, 256, 5, 12, $1 billion. $1 million is 10 doubles away from $1 billion.
But how do you find the doubles?
Well, that's the game. That's the part of the game. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So the doubles now becomes investment opportunities. You know, what you buy into. Do you start a company where it has a high value, you know, you can really scale it and finding something that can scale? Do you invest into things that are going to give you 6, 8, 10%, or are you going to go play ball and take the risk? That's the game that you're going to start learning that, you know, part of my money is going to be hedged and I'm going to buy some gold because I'm not going to become a billionaire off gold, but I'm buying it because gold is money and something happens to the economy, I'm protected with the gold. But you know what? I'm going to put some of this money in mutual funds because I know long term I'm going to make 8 to 12% on this. I'm fine with that. I might do a real estate deal because long term I may do some money, although right now commercial real estate may be an interesting dynamic because I think Zoom crushed commercial real estate. The commercial real estate model it's been crushed.
Yeah.
And by the way, it may never come back the same way ever again. Commercial
Maybe
real estate.
20 years from now or something. Who knows?
Oh, I don't even think. I think it's gone.
Really?
And here's what I mean. Look, we have this space, right? Okay, you got this space. Did you get it in the last 4 months? How long have you
got
had
it
it?
before COVID.
Okay,
yeah.
so
6 months before. Yeah.
But if you get this today, right now, office space in Dallas, office space nationwide, companies are looking at their business models and they're just saying, why do I need 100,000 square feet of office space? Why do I need it? But if you go out there and you look at the numbers, you're like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to do commercial real estate. You know, but if I find if I team up with a investment banker, if I team up with a guy that's managing money, and I go with a VC team, and this is a guy that's, you know, flipping opportunities fairly quickly, and I dump $1 million with him, and within 5 years he turns $1 million into $5 million. That's 5x in 5 years. That may not be a bad idea. So you got to find those, and they're out there, by the way. They're out there. So Ray Dalio plays a game of doubles. Warren Buffett's a doubles game. All these guys are doubles game. And
a lot of us investing in businesses.
Yes. I'm a business guy. I'm not a real estate guy. There are people that are, and by the way, that doesn't mean real estate doesn't work. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense for me to say there's real estate billionaires everywhere. Our president is a real estate billionaire. So for me to knock real estate would have no value to it. But for me, I'm more about, I have an idea. What are you guys doing? Me and Tiffany are thinking about starting a marketing company. Okay, how can this thing scale? Well, let me tell you what we got. We got 3 packages, boom, boom, boom. Who's going to be target audience? We're going to be targeting people in this world. Okay, interesting. How much are they going to pay? We foresee us doing $6 million in revenue within 24 months. What have you done to be able to earn this? I'm a Columbia guy, I'm a this. How much money do you need? I need $2 million. I can't give you $2 million. Can I come in for $100,000? I put $100,000. The next thing, this thing sells for $200 million. That $100,000 all of a sudden became $2.2 million. That's a victory. So those opportunities are out there. You just got to focus. And then the last one I would tell you with the money, so we talked about what? We talked about game.
Money's a game, you need cash. It's a doubles game.
Doubles game.
Yep.
And I'll tell you one more would be you have to be maniacal about being patient. I mean, you have to be patiently aggressive. You know, patiently aggressive. It's so tough to do.
Because you want your money to double now.
Exactly.
It might take 10 years.
Yeah, but if you are willing to do the 10 years, it may double 40 times. It may double 30 times. You know, like when Bezos said, just hang tight. I'm not going to give you dividends. Just trust me on this. Trust me on this, right? And at the beginning, if you've heard the story where he goes and raises $2 million from, he gets $50,000 from 40 people. That's what, $2 million. And he gives them 20%.
Wow.
20%.
He gives up 20% of that $2 million.
He gives them 20% just for $2 million. You know what that 20% is worth today? $200 billion.
Oh my gosh.
That's the point. So can you imagine 1994 Amazon gets started? Forget about you put $2 million. Just say you put $50 million.
Wow.
Just you put 50,000. What is 0.5% of a $1 trillion company right now? 0.5%, you're still a half a billionaire.
Wow.
Your 50,000 is worth $500 million, give or take whatever the numbers we're doing right. The point is, that is a massive victory. The guy who put $10,000 and he gave it to Berkshire Hathaway in 1974, I don't know if you've heard this story. You know, Warren Buffett is starting, he says, I'll give you $10,000. Never touches the money. Goes back to his regular job, makes $100,000 a year. You know how much that have you read this article?
No, tell me.
The $10,000, if you go on Business Insider, you pull it up, is worth $780 today.
780
million.
Wow.
Never did anything to it. So that's the part about patiently aggressive.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. But
So
the
hard to
doubles
do.
get bigger later on, not early on. The
they
doubles
do.
are bigger, you're 15, 20, 25.
That's what Buffett talks about. Just like his successes,
Yeah.
he's lived longer. You know,
Yeah.
he's just stayed around longer to let the money continue
Exactly.
to compound.
Yeah.
And that compounded interest is where it's at. What if someone, you know, they have any product, a physical product, digital product, coaching, a software, and they're watching or listening. What should they be thinking about to making the product that much better? They've put a lot of time and energy launching it, building it. They've got sales. Maybe they've had it for a year or two. How do they break it all down? And it says, is it 20 different factors? Is it like just do these 3 things and it's going to improve the quality of your product?
Yeah.
What should they think about?
It's a really good question. So there's like 3 different angles I want to take this. So one is like what I talked about in the book, which is like the value equation. So
What
it's
is
like,
that?
So there's 4 variables in the value equation. The first one is the dream outcome, which is the thing that I'm delivering fundamentally valuable? And this is especially for people probably more so who are trying like starting out in their like entrepreneurial career.
You want to draw it out for me too, if you want to.
Sure.
Well, I'll hold it up for people.
Yeah. So you've got your dream outcome. So I'll just put dream here, right? You've got dream outcome, which is the first variable. The second variable is the perceived likelihood of achievement. And so the idea is, and I'll give you an example of this. If you have, let's say you wanted to get plastic surgery, whatever, and
Is that what you did with your calves?
that's exactly what I did. If you wanted to get plastic surgery and you had the option of 2 guys who are going to do the surgery, one guy has done 10,000 surgeries and one guy is fresh out of medical school, this is his first surgery, which guy would you go with? Probably 10,000. It might even take this guy half the time to do the surgery as this guy.
And
So-
double the price.
Right.
Yeah.
So we might, and it's double the price. Why? Because of the perceived likelihood of achievement. We believe that when we pay this man, we are more likely to achieve what we want. Even though the work is the same, probably longer on this side, but our perception of what we're going to get in a real way increases prior to purchase, which is the same reason that if you have like 20 people who told you that this restaurant is amazing, you're willing to pay way more, even though you haven't experienced it yet. Because it's the perceived likelihood of getting the outcome. To rewind on the dream outcome, this is more a commentary that how is it that you have a 50,000, you can solve the same problem, let's say weight loss, because everybody understands that one. If I'm trying to help somebody lose weight, there's $50,000 solutions and there's $5 solutions. There's free solutions, right? $50,000 solutions, you can get liposuction, right? And get a full body lift and whatever.
Done in a day.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can get an ebook, for $5. So the question is, why are these 2 things, more valuable? And that again goes to perceived achievement. But if I went from the weight loss to, let's say, making money, if I had 2 things, in general, all the things in the making money category will be priced higher because there's a more direct ROI.
Yes.
So that's why between categories, dream outcome as a category can be higher or lower. But then once you're within a category, it's the other 3 variables. So perceived likelihood of achievement is number 1 of the other 3 variables. The next variable is underneath, which is the time delay. So between when I pay and when I get, what's my delay there? Right? So if I were to say, using the weight loss example, if you swipe your credit card and then you look down at your stomach and you just have abs, how valuable?
We'll pay a lot for that.
Exactly. And all we did was just decrease the time delay. And so if, let's say in a B2B example, if you had a marketing agency, for example, and normally it's like, okay, you guys need to send me all this creative and we got to get everything spun up and it's going to take us, 45 days to really get everything, ramp. We got to build a funnel and handle it, blah, 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 right? And then let's do a different example. We're on the same call. The guy says, cool, we're going to get you going. And you hang up the phone and your phone rings with a prospect.
That's pretty big.
Even if it's the exact same thing, 45 days from now, your phone rings with the prospect. Today, your phone rings with the prospect. How different is the perception of value? Phenomenally different, which is why the time delay is such a huge piece, which is why time to value, we're referencing earlier, is such a huge part of increasing the perceived value of the product. And so that's the time delay.
That's the third.
Yep. And then the fourth one is effort and sacrifice. And so effort and sacrifice are 2 sides of the same coin. So effort, as I define it, are things that you must begin doing that you do not want to do, that you did not have to do prior to the purchase.
Give me an example.
If I have to wake up early to go to the gym, that would be effort. That is something that I now have to do, that I do. And so sacrifice I use as the equal opposite, which is what do I have to stop doing that I want to do, that I would continue doing if I didn't
I
have
have to stop eating milkshakes at midnight or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even in the B2B example with the marketing agency, well, now what do I have to do? I have to start making this content. I have to start hopping on meetings every week. We have to start looking over these metrics. Like
To hire new people, I gotta, yeah.
Right. And so oftentimes, especially like businesses, they think that their price is the most expensive thing that they have in the cost, and it's not. So think about this. If you've ever asked someone, hey, I'll give you my service for free, and they said no, it's because there are other costs that you're not taking into consideration, which also means a lot of times your price has far more wiggle room in it than you think it does. And if you can decrease a much bigger hidden cost by asking for more money, and you can solve a hidden cost, you can make more money and improve their experience at the same time.
Right.
And that's when you just make oodles and oodles of money.
When does someone know? So this is the good to great concept, right? What we should be focusing on is kind of this main analogy and factor. When does someone understand? A lot of people talk about their worth. Like, I'm worth this, I deserve this, whether they're an employee or they're an entrepreneur and they want to price something.
Yeah.
When should they be thinking about their worth and increasing their rates, whether as an employee or as an entrepreneur? How do they know? Because you're only worth what people are willing to pay. So how do you get people to pay what you believe you're worth?
So I think there's three variables that come into like how much you can charge, right?
Okay.
The first one is value or perceived value from the prospect.
Perceived value, yeah.
So perceived value. The second one is how good you are at negotiating, which would become, which I put that, or persuading, you could probably put that as just persuasion in general.
That's a
Because
good.
if it's a job, you might be negotiating.
Sure.
If it's a customer, you might be negotiating too, but it's persuasion in general.
And that's a whole skill to develop on its own.
100%. And the third one is how unique it is. So that there's no easy alternative, right? And so if, like, for example, let's say I provide something that's really valuable, unbelievable at selling.
Rare.
And then another guy is willing to just do all the same stuff for just less.
Right.
Right. And so it's being decommoditized, which I talk about in the book too, is that people have to be able to, they cannot, and the goal should be with our services that we have, that no one can hold up our service and somebody else's and say, these two are similar enough, I'll pick the cheaper one. And so the goal is, how can we differentiate ourselves in enough ways by looking at the value equation and thinking, what are all the things that are making this take longer and how can I remove them? What are all the efforts and sacrifices, even these micro things, these nuances that make things more difficult? And so like the kings of this, if you look at like Amazon, right? Like the biggest companies in the world, I'll reverse. The small companies that are out there, they always focus on the first two things. Let me promise something really big. Let me show you all these testimonials, and that's all they do. Just promote these things. It's amazing. Listen to Sammy. It's amazing. Listen to Tommy. Right? That's all they do. But the biggest companies in the world focus on the bottom side of the equation, which is how can we make things faster and how can we make things more effortless. Like Netflix destroyed Blockbuster not because they fundamentally changed the product at all. All they did was they made it happen immediately and from the comfort of your home. Right? And so they just dramatically decreased the cost and effort that was associated with watching movies, and boom, they blew up.
Right.
And so, like, Jason Fladley, who's a friend, he said, one of the easiest business models in the world is just look at what everyone else is doing and do it in half the time. Right? Like, it's a simple, like, people are like, what do I do for business? Just look what, like, if someone, can cut your lawn in whatever amount of time, or you clean houses, say you can clean houses in less time because it's just less inconvenience when you're there in their house.
Less time and less money, or same money?
Same money.
Yeah.
Or more money. Right. Like it depends on what are the hidden costs. So like probably like with cleaning, what are all the things that people hate? Scheduling is probably a pain.
Right.
Hearing the noise is probably a pain. Like silent cleaners.
Right.
Right? Like what are, like you list this out, and we outline that in the book of like the process of thinking through this, but like what are all the pains and problems that your customers complain to you about? And so like the gold is always in the support tickets. So when you talk about like obsessing about a customer, right? It's let's go through all the comments on the videos, right? Let's go through all of the support tickets that are coming in, and those complaints, inside of the complaints, sure, like what you don't want to do is say like, well, these guys are all victims, because then you lose all the power as a business owner by just blaming them. So if you just accept all of it as like, these are all like, as long as the thing that they're saying is not false, if it's unreasonable, then let's see if we can figure it out.
Right.
Maybe no one else has figured out how to do this, but we might as well try.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think if you can approach it with like very open hands of like when you accept the feedback, it gives you the gold to really create huge breakthroughs in products and services.
Were you always open to the feedback from customers?
No.
But when
not
did you
at all.
learn to be like, okay, this sounds like a victim conversation, but
there's something here where this person's struggling, and if I can make it more effortless, it's going to be a better product for that person.
I think it's just taken time, and I think it's because I think a lot of it is really beating down your ego, and I think like in a lot of ways with business, in my opinion, ego is the enemy because it gives us too much confidence when we don't deserve it.
When did you start beating down your ego?
I mean, I've been trying to do it since I was 19. It's just been a very slow process. I just realized that it was the root of all the unhappiness that I had, and like everything that I had was in comparison to other people for no reason, and like I've obviously adopted some perspectives we'll probably get into later, but that are contrarian in nature in terms of like how we live, but not just, there's no benefit to ego. There's just none. And then I have a different thing that I've been thinking about recently. I'm excited to share it with you.
Sure. Yeah.
So you've probably heard this, but there's a lot of evidence that points to, with mitochondrial DNA, that we go back to like one woman birthed, like the mitochondrial DNA of all humans tracks back to one woman, right? And so I think that that's interesting within the context of legacy, because people talk about legacy and they want to like leave something for their progeny. And we love our sideways family members, right?
What do you mean?
Like like your
current family.
Yeah, exactly. But like if we all came from the same mitochondrial DNA, right? Then we not to be like weird and huggy lovey, but like
family members.
100%.
Yeah, of course.
I find that really fascinating. It's like a super distant cousin, and
This is why when I met you for the first time.
Yeah.
What did I do when I met you?
Deep long hug.
Deep long hug.
Oh yeah.
And I do this with
It was a triple hug.
It was a triple because
Yeah.
you broke it. You broke it. I was like, nah, bring it in, bro.
And at the end,
and then you had to surrender. And there's a reason I do that is because.
That's the thing. I didn't know that was a thing.
I mean, that's just unless it's somewhere where it's like maybe someone who's older that doesn't want to be hugged, or your wife, I'm going to give a quicker hug. I'm not going to be grabbing someone. Yeah, but it's it's a respectful, understanding the human being in front of you, doing your best to respect it. But with you, I knew I could just hug you, and it's going to make you uncomfortable.
Oh.
And it's going to make you uncomfortable, but for me, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again. I don't know if I'm going to see you tomorrow or anyone tomorrow.
Totally.
And so why not embrace people with, a 3 to 5, 10-second awkward hug, and let people know that you really appreciate the moment.
And you're present. Yeah.
That's what I try to do. It's what I try to focus on. But and if we're all distant cousins, then why not treat each other that way, the best way possible,
And I didn't mean to launch all the way there, because I'll go right back to ego, so I can scoop us back. Otherwise, we'll go in that direction.
Was there ever a moment where you didn't unconditionally love yourself? And if so, when did that shift where you stopped that and you started saying, okay, I appreciate myself because of my contribution and my service and who I am? When was that shift?
I don't think it was ever I just didn't love myself. There were times, obviously, be angry with yourself or frustrated with yourself or thinking, I'm not doing enough. I mean, I can remember my birthdays, to be honest with you, probably up till my 40th birthday, including my 40th birthday. You have a birthday with a 0 on it once you're over past 30. 35, sometimes 5 years on it as well. People look at their life differently culturally. And I used to think it was bullshit. But sure enough, I would do it. And I remember turning 40, and I was really, really unhappy. I was like, Jesus, I've not done enough. I've not helped enough people. I'd helped tens of millions of people at that point already. Done all over the earth in 100 plus countries at that point. But it was still kind of stuck in my head. So I would earn the love by over-delivering, change somebody's life. Like, I don't get it because somebody says, oh, I love you, Tony. I mean, I appreciate that. Or, oh, you're the greatest. It's got to be my standard. My standard's higher than their standard for me, right? So when I get up and someone's going to kill themselves and they're suicidal and boom, turn around, and they're no longer not going to kill themselves, but they're transformed, their life is there. That's when I go, okay, now we've hit the center of what I'm made for. Now, I deserve to feel this euphoric feeling within myself and appreciation. And even then, I still know it's God coming through me. I don't have the delusion it's just me. But I think sometime after 40, I finally saw the stupidity of it. I accumulated enough that I looked at life with fresh eyes. And I can say by the time I turned 60 a year ago, I noticed it was interesting because my birthday, I didn't have an ounce of it. I was just like, how could I at this stage of my life when I've had the privilege of serving so many humans in so many contexts, from turning around, guys going to kill themselves with PTSD to helping kids turn around to getting kids off cocaine or adults to, helping people build multi-billion-dollar businesses from nothing. And when I've lived this long, I can't go by without hearing half a dozen stories a day or a dozen stories a day from people telling me how something I did changed their life. So it's not that I'm so smart now, it's just I've stacked it. By the way, though, stacking is the way you can do things. Most of us stack the negative. If you are really angry, it's not usually because of just the moment. It's that it happened again. It's like if you've ever lost it or overreacted to your kid or to a friend or a business or even within yourself, it's because it happened again. We hit this 1, 2, 3 many point, and then our nervous system overreacts. But what I've learned is you can stack the good. But for example, if you go into a state of really strong anger for more than 5 minutes, your immune system is suppressed between an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's a physiological fact. But no one had done any study. I started stacking good. Like, okay, let me stack a dozen great memories, feel them, see them, experience them. And I felt this biochemical change that didn't just last a half hour, an hour, or 10 minutes. It went on for a day or two. And so I think I've learned to stack the good. So just having the experience is not enough. You got to stack the good to be able to appreciate it. But I think, just come back to the main point here from my perspective, which could be completely full, it's just my perspective. So I want to point that out. I think the more you find unconditional love for others, the easier it is to find in yourself. And I think the focus is serving and loving, and that's what will get you to the point where you start doing it. But if you want to speed it up, stack all the good you've done, you'll feel great about yourself.
I already know all the comments that have come through. Thousands of comments tell me, but what about my family that's toxic? What about my partner who's toxic? And how do I love someone unconditionally when they don't respect me? I can't trust them. What about situations like that?
All those reactions are natural human reactions from ego. Because it's all about you, me, what I'm not getting, what I'm not doing, and that's why you're in pain. And so I'm not telling you like I haven't done this shit. I've done it too in the past, but it's an old pattern I don't really do anymore. And it used to affect me. Now, not a dominant one, I wouldn't have become who I become. Early in my life, I developed this belief that life is calling not to give me something, life is calling for me to deliver things, for me to bring something to life. And I felt the joy that came from not getting but giving, and I got hooked on that core pattern, and then the pattern of learning so I'd have something to give, which I know one of the things I respect about you, Lewis, is that you have that same pattern in you. You're always trying to learn more because underneath it all, you also want to give it. You want it for you, but you want to share it, right? And so those patterns help me not be in what they're not giving me. And all this language, today people don't understand the power of their language, like toxic. What the hell are you talking about? You've been reading too much social media and thinking about yourself, or somebody raised you to constantly judge everybody else. We live in a culture now where people, you're evil or you're like me. That's basically how it is, right? The whole world, everybody else is immoral unless they do what you do, think what you think, experience what you think. I mean, being a liberal, I was a liberal, right? Being a liberal growing up meant I would fight for your ability to say and believe whatever you want different than me. Today now, everybody wants everybody to think the same thing, otherwise they're evil or otherwise they could hurt me. Whatever happened to sticks and stones will break your bones and words will never hurt me. We have this whole thing that words are evil, words are action, it's bullshit. And all it does is make you incredibly weak as a human being, and you're more than that. We all are more than that. But you know what? Like a kid that's never broken their bones, deathly afraid of breaking the bone. But if you're a kid and you're rough and tumble, you broke multiple bones and they healed, you don't have any fear of it. There's so many kids that have been raised to be safe and secure every moment. Anything that's insecure or unsafe, they don't want to be a part of, including language. And what it does is make you incredibly weak and fearful. And that's why there's so many people that are abundant that are angry all the time. Because they're angry because they're not growing. So don't get me wrong. I know some people are not a good influence. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying you're more than somebody's influence unless you obsess about it every moment and make them wrong so you can make yourself feel superior morally, psychologically, or spiritually. That's bullshit. Stop the pattern. We've all done it. Catch yourself. Because if you want joy, happiness, and freedom and an extraordinary life, it will not come from blame. Never. There's no pride that comes from blame. I don't mean fake pride where you make to feel good. I'm talking about real pride. Pride is something you earn. Like people tell me, oh, I have no self-esteem because my parents used to say this or they'd say that. I'd say that's such bullshit. I'm not saying it's bullshit they didn't say that. I said it's bullshit, that's why you don't have self-esteem. Self-esteem does not come from what people say about you. Self-esteem comes from what you experience about yourself. See, someone can tell you your whole life you're a piece of crap, and there's part of you go, you're full of it, I'm gonna show you. Lots of people have done that. They never bought it. Or someone tell you you're beautiful your whole life, you go, I'm not really beautiful. So what people tell you doesn't matter at all. It's what you stack. It's what you assemble. It's what you create. It's the habit of what you put in your head. And today I don't blame you because we got a whole culture that's always blaming somebody else for something in their life. But blame is not a strategy for pride. That's why you listen to these blaming people. They're all angry all the time. Listen, if I wanted to blame, I grew up in an environment, I didn't even share it till my mom passed, and even then I didn't share. I grew up in a pretty rough environment. My mom was a beautiful soul, but when she drank alcohol and she mixed it with prescription drugs, it was a different creature, and it was a violent creature. And I have a younger brother 5 years younger and a younger sister 7 years younger. And my mom would get nuts, and I didn't want them to get hurt. So I was 5'1" in high school. She grabbed me by the hair and smashed me against the wall till I bled. Now, I never shared this, and I'm not denigrating her in any way. I only shared it like 4 or 5 years after she died. Because I was talking to a group of kids in New York City, all without fathers, 80% African American, about 20% Hispanic out of their group roughly, no white kids, and I'm talking about your biography is not your destiny. And it doesn't matter what you've been through, what you decide now is what's going to control your life. What you decide each day going forward is going to decide your life. And I can look at them seeing me, and I can read their minds. This big, tall, white, rich guy is going to tell me biography doesn't matter. So I said, let me tell you my story. And I told them the whole story, way more than I'm telling you. And every one of them was crying their eyes out when they're done. I said, look where I am right now. Because I wouldn't assemble the story that my past equals my future. The past only equals your future if you live there. If you're using a rear view mirror to guide yourself, you're gonna crash. So what you've been through is horrific. What you've been through is unjust. I'm on your side. But if you hang on to it, you have no future. And you have no one to blame but yourself. And these kids, to their credit, man, they just responded to the challenge because they first cried their eyes out hearing all the stories. My mom would think I was lying, and I wasn't lying. She poured liquid soap down my throat till I threw up, and I wasn't lying. So it's not the physical abuse, it's the fact that this is the person you love most that's trying to hurt you that messes with your head. So I could have been messed up for life, but I didn't. Because something inside me says, I'm responsible for this life. And part of that is because I started reading when I was 13, 14 biographies of people, the greatest people in history, and reading their lives and finding out, guess what? Their lives were far from perfect. Some of them had worse lives than I had. But when you have no reference and all you do is go online, you talk to other people, making everybody else toxic, and I'm like this, and they didn't do that, then you get to have the shitty life just like those other people. Why are they online so much? Because they don't have a life. Right? Don't be one of those. Free yourself from the chains of your past. I'm not saying your past doesn't matter, but listen, my mother, I tell people this all the time, and it's the truth. If my mother had been the mother I wanted her to be, the mother she should have been, I would not be the man I'm proud to be today. Because I had to become a practical psychologist way before any schooling, figure out when's she gonna go in the mood, how do I change her state, how do I protect her from the kids, it felt life and death, and it was to some extent. So I developed skills at such a young age. Then when I learned things, I just added to my skills, but I had a core sense of certainty that I could turn anybody around because it started with my mother. And thank God for her. And she encouraged me in so many ways. She did so many great things. And she loved me, even though it didn't look like it at times. So,
Right.
But if your parents, if the people around you said all the things you thought they should have, if they had just not been toxic, if they'd encouraged you, you wouldn't have any muscle. And right now you don't have any muscle because you're using that as the excuse, if you're thinking that. And I'm not attacking you, brothers and sisters. I'm calling to you because I know you're more. Otherwise, I'd just keep my mouth shut. You've been hypnotized by a culture of weakness. Now, having said that, I'll say one last thing. I know you haven't got other questions, but it's so important what you've asked. Yes, there are people that you don't want to hang out with that will not serve you. But then move on. Don't sit there and talk about it constantly. Don't waste your time. And you say, but what if it's family, Tony? Mine was family too. Then you learn to grow. You go, they're in my life. If someone can get your goat, if someone can piss you off, if someone can make you feel less than, that's God coming to you saying, grow. You need some spiritual growth. There's got to be some change in your perception, your belief, your emotions, your spiritual look of life, so that can't happen anymore. And when it happens, like at 61, I've been through so many of those things, and I like to do things in mass. I took on big challenges, so I'd have to grow more. But then life throws them at you too. When they come, you just go, okay, it's going to have me until I grow. What needs a shift in me so that it no longer has an impact? But you know, Jim Rohn used to say, my original teacher, he used to say, Tony, what happens if I've got a cup of coffee here? And he'd say, what if your worst enemy drops sugar in your coffee? What's going to happen? And I go, well, you'd have sweet coffee. And he goes, what if your best friend, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your loved one drops one drop of strychnine? I said, you'd be dead. He goes, that's right. Life is both sugar and strychnine, so watch your coffee. His whole thing was stand guard at the door of your brain. But some people take that and go, oh my God, you can kill me. It was a metaphor. These people are not so toxic. They're toxic because you give them energy. So if your mom's crazy and constantly criticizing you and it drives you nuts, just go, that's my mom. That's her way of showing love. And I find a new perspective. And no matter what she does, just stay in a beautiful state and love on her and think, boy, think of all that she cares and feels for, all that she's frustrated in life, or all that she's going through that's made her this way. And think, God, I don't have to go through this. I can love her. It's like your growth is the only limit to your happiness. If you're not happy, you're not growing in some area. And usually it's a place where you're blaming, you're pointing the finger. I don't care if it's government, don't get me wrong. People can be unfair, unjust, that's for sure happens. But you can't control that. You can't make it not happen. What you have to do is become stronger than any of it so you're free. Freedom comes from growth. Freedom does not come from control. Because control is an illusion. You can't control everybody. No matter how hard you try, you can't control what they think or feel. And not everybody's going to be fair and just. And you, my dear friends, and I have not always been fair and just. Whether we admit it or not, it's just the nature of being, a human being. Mm-hmm. But we can make the largest pattern fair and just and loving and powerful and serving and growing until it becomes the dominant thing inside you. And then you experience life as being great, not you're great. Life's great because you're living a great path.
It seems like what I'm seeing and hearing from a lot of people that this past year, everything has fallen apart for them. Their health, their relationships, their finances, their mission or purpose, and these, their spiritual awareness, like every area of life has been in breakdown mode for some people. Well, not everyone. Some people have had incredible lives and have stepped up to the occasion and broken through on all these things. But I'm seeing a pattern of a lot of people breaking down in many areas. Hypothetical scenario, let's say you could only focus on one thing to get you started. You only had the time and energy to focus on one of these areas. Your health, your relationships are all breaking down. Your finances, you're failing everywhere. Where should people lean into first to kind of create that foundation so that everything else can start to rise as well?
I think before you answer what to do, you got to answer why you're there. It is not because of the pandemic. I remember when 9/11 happened and people tell, oh my God, my life was destroyed because of 9/11. And there were people in the same building who turned their life around, grew spiritually, grew closer to their family, made their businesses larger, and the same building burned down, right? I know in my case, 9/11 comes, if you can imagine, I'm fortunate enough to have now more than 80 companies in all these different industries. And obviously, I've done pretty darn well by most people's standards of business and life. But my core mission is what I do for a living. It's why I'm here talking to you right now. It's getting people to be free and alive and have the level of fulfillment that they deserve to have. I know they desire, but I also believe they deserve to have. But to deserve to have it, you got to do certain things, right? And so you're not in the place of being overweight because you lost your job. So stop the bullshit. Blame. Blame is not a strategy for a meaningful life. Blame is not a strategy for greatness. So you got to resolve that, number one. And then your question was, what's the one thing to focus on if you can only focus on one? I think it's smart to focus on one thing primarily. Focus on too many can be overwhelming. Other people, it's good to focus on multiple things. It depends on your personality. So I wouldn't presuppose. But then the answer would be whichever thing you're most desirous of changing, whatever thing is giving you the most pain. So if it's your relationship, I'd go full force on that. Now, in the world we're in today, you don't usually have the privilege of going, okay, I want to work on just being happy. Well, I can train you to be happy while hell's breaking loose. You can sit in this chair and be totally euphoric. But if you do that in a Western culture, people come and take your furniture, right? So you probably have to work on both your business or financial side and some personal side. I would be working on both. And to me, the way to attack that if you're not sure which areas to start with the body. And I know you can relate to this, Lewis, because you and I both share this in common. It's like, I always teach physiology first, as you well know. If you change the body, you'll change the emotions. If you change the emotions, you'll change your decisions, you'll change the quality of your life. Because the quality of your life is your emotions. It's not what you get. You can have $1 billion and commit suicide. People have done it, right? You can have beautiful relationships and commit suicide. You can have people loving you and be sad all the time. Our pattern of emotion is our home. And you have to upgrade your home. You have to train it. And one way to train it is the emotion comes from the way you move, the way you breathe, the way you speak. So if I said to your listeners, there's a depressed person behind the curtain over here, and I'll give $100,000 to their favorite charity if they had to describe their body, their posture, and they're depressed, you tell me. I'll just use you as the example. What does that person look like?
They're slunched down. They're looking down at their feet. They're not looking upward. Their shoulders are over.
Are they breathing full or shallow, do you think?
They're shallow.
Are they talking fast or slow?
They're talking, if they're depressed, they're probably talking fast because they're not calm.
Well, no, that's usually stressed. Depressed is different than stressed.
They're slow. They're probably talking low volume, slower than.
And all those physical characteristics change your biochemistry towards this feeling of being depressed. And in a depressed state, you won't do anything. When I used to be depressed, and I don't get it anymore, I just took it out of my life. I even took the language of it out of my life. Because the words you create a biochemical response. But when I did that decades ago, because I was like having those thoughts like, is there a reason to still be here? That kind of crazy shit in your head. I got out of it by using anger originally. I'd much like, sometimes if somebody's really sad or depressed, I'll make them angry. And people are like, what's he doing? He's making them angry. Because angry is much more resourceful than depressed. From anger, I can get you to laughter. I can get you to taking action. And then gradually I got where I didn't need anger. It was about growth. It was about contribution. It was about meaning. So there's like stages to go through. But to answer your question, they should work on both their business side of their life and personal, one of each. And in order for either one of those to work, you need to be in a strong emotional state. And if you start with your body, like I start every morning in my cold water, start every morning with my workout. I started every morning on feeding my mind, right? So there's certain things you got to do physically so you're strong enough to remember the truth. Because remember, fear is physical. You feel it in your throat or your gut. So is courage. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It just means you're strong enough you push through in spite of the fear, right? And courage feels different in the body. So when you go lift or you go for a sprint or a strong run or you jump in that freezing water, when you push your mind to go beyond what's comfortable, you feel a strength inside you, and that strength will help you to change your body, your emotions, your relationships, whatever. But then the other thing I gotta say is model someone who's successful. Don't just do this shit by trial and error. Like, find somebody who has what you want. Ideally, maybe more than one person, 2 or 3, and figure out what are they doing different than you in their relationship? What do they believe different than you about relationship? If it's their body, what are they doing different? They're not lucky. They're doing things differently. You might be slightly biochemically different, but there's patterns there that you can see. And so instead of learning by trial and error, which can take decades you may never learn, Jim Rohn taught me success leaves clues, man. Find someone's got what you want, study what they do, every aspect of it, and then add yourself to it. And that's the pathway to speed of transformation. So now, I've done it. I'm not the only person. There's so many companies that went from worse off than they'd ever been in their history to the best off because they found a way to pivot.
You're so competitive consistently over decades, where most people go in for 3 to 5 years, something doesn't work out, and then they stop their competitive edge. So how do you keep that edge?
You know, it's really interesting because I did an interview yesterday with somebody who's really popular right now, and they're very young, and yet they said they already have those valleys where they went into a funk, like they were burnt out.
Right, after like 2 years of working hard or something.
Yeah. And I just said, you know what's funny is I've never had a burnout ever. I've been going like this for a long time.
Decades.
35, 40 years.
Wow.
Even. I mean, I started going at it in my teens hard, and I never had that burnout. And I think that's kind of a state of mind that if you're going to get burnt out if you want to get burnt out. But I always was going like this, and so I just kind of felt like I'm so fortunate to have it going. Why should I ever let the momentum go the other way? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, one of my great sayings is there's positive people and negative people. And when you're with a negative person or you're with a positive person, one of two things is going to happen. The negative person is going to make the positive person negative, or you're going to take the negative person and make them positive. So I've always paid attention to who I've always been around also. And I never wanted to be around people that didn't want to achieve.
Right.
But I've never even come close to saying, I'm done, I'm burnt out, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right. How do you spot the people who are truly wanting to achieve and who have that positive energy? Because sometimes you could bring people on your team and they could have that in the beginning, but they could kind of lose that, or they could spin off a negative cycle. Are you very loyal to the people that you have in your companies? You give them multiple chances, or is it like, okay, enough is enough, like cutthroat?
What a great question that is, because I even list a bunch of people at the front of this book who really helped make me become who I am. Because even though I'm the leader, I'm the bull, you are dependent on people when you build a company my size of 60,000 people.
That's it? And pretty small, right?
and I truly probably have 25 vice presidents that average 25 years.
Wow.
Okay, I tease my people about this all the time.
Wow.
I go, I never, ever in the last 35 years have probably lost direct answers to me, maybe one or two people. And so why are y'all losing them every year?
Right.
And so when people ask me what are you most proud of, and I think it's the people that truly deal with me on a day-to-day basis. Even my assistants, I have one for 27 years and I'm one for 26 years. Wow. That truly grew up with me, that were young girls. Or not young girls. Right. And I think it is. If they'd tell you, they'd say that's the hardest son of a bitch to work for in the world, but I would not work for anybody else.
Wow.
I think that's what they would all tell you.
I mean, in a world where it seems like everyone wants to change jobs every year or two because they want something new and exciting, how do you cultivate that culture or environment where they're like still excited every year? Is it because you're acquiring new companies all the time?
I think that's part of it, is that they know that we're the bull, and that even in tough times, if I call them into my boardroom, it's not, hey, we're getting bought out. It's, who are we buying? Because we eat the weak in bad times. So, so I think it's leadership, respect. It's knowing that that we're the bull out there in our industries. And
for those who don't know what you mean by the bull, who haven't read the book, what does that mean to be the bull?
Just, you're the ones always that everybody else is worried about. We bought a couple of companies in the last week.
Right.
And it's because we were opportunists, and we're the ones who can always deliver.
Wow.
And we're the ones who have the funding, the due diligence to do it quickly. We outwork people. A lawyer of mine who handles all the M&A, he was at the office from 9 a.m. Sunday a week ago till Monday night at 9 p.m., 36 straight hours getting a deal done. Okay, it's just a culture of we are the best. and not that there's not great companies out there, and we're just still in the whole world, a company.
Right.
But and what we do and doing mergers and acquisitions in the restaurant business or gaming business or whatever, aquariums, amusement parks. But we outworked everybody to get the Houston Rockets. I mean, my team during Hurricane Harvey, when everybody was flooding, was still at the office trying to get that contract signed because we wanted it done by Monday of Labor Day. And
during the big flood in Houston, is that
100%. And but the Houston Rockets went on the market on July 17th, and we signed the deal up on September the 5th. For the most money ever paid for a professional sports team. Now, so it's just saying we're going to get it done before anybody else can.
Now, why pay the most premium? Why not try to create the win-win, get the best deal for yourself? Why say I'm going to overpay? Maybe it's not an overpay in your mind, but why do that? And when everyone's telling you, maybe that's a little too much,
Because I listen. And I'm going to tell you what I heard. I heard from some very, very smart people, and this is one of the reasons that the book's titled "Shut Up and Listen" is because I do listen, and I had some really smart people who know a lot of people who went after sports franchises say, they quit too soon. It's the biggest regret they ever had.
Meaning they sold the business?
No. They went after, say, the LA Clippers. They went after the Golden State Warriors. They went after and people that could afford to do it. And they just said, oh, I'm not going to pay that extra $100 million or $200 million or whatever. And then they had to go buy a team in the years to come somewhere else, not in their hometown,
right. Or a minor league team
pay more,
or something,
whatever. And so I was told there's never been a team sell for less in sports. And it's just a mistake you don't make. And so I listened to people and said, you could regret this. And it's kind of funny, but I already knew I was not going to lose, okay? I was not going to lose this opportunity. And when other people, I even had the Tad Brown, who I've known for years, who runs the business side of the team even today, call me at one point and said, y'all aren't in the room kicking tires like some of the other people. Are you losing interest? I said, no, Ted, I haven't lost interest at all. I said, everybody else is in there trying to justify how do you pay $2 billion, because they made it really clear that they wouldn't sell it for under $2 billion.
Wow.
They're all trying to figure out how you pay that for it. I was out there making sure I could raise the money. And so
I like that.
And no, seriously, because
you weren't even thinking. You said, "I'm going."
Right. Yeah. I knew that the team, on a bad year, is going to make $40 million, and on a good year is going to make $90 million. Okay, I knew that. Okay, and I'd known Tad for 15 years. But if you start trying to say, okay, if it makes $40 million or it makes $80 million,
it's going to take
do you pay 1.9 billion or 1.8 billion or 2.2 billion? It has nothing to do with it. Okay. Okay, and so while everybody else and was doing due diligence that way, even people that have a lot more money than me, okay, they're trying to get there and they missed the box. Okay, they were looking at the wrong thing instead of realizing this is a 10-year play. And I can promise you one thing: I bought this team in 2016. Yep. In 2026, it'll be worth $3 billion.
Really?
Okay. Yes. Okay. It's already moved up in value. So it's just the feel and knowing what to do and not getting caught up in the due diligence that doesn't matter. And I think one of the reasons I've been successful is because nobody does due diligence on an acquisition more than my team does. But it's just don't get caught up in the things that don't matter. Like price of a few $100 million. and you know what's so funny? And then you know how I got their attention? Everybody else wrote letters. They said, okay, we want everybody's letter of intent today. Everybody had all kind of ins and all the potential buyers. Everybody had all kind of ins and outs and everything. And you know what I did? I said, I'm going to put up $100 million non-refundable.
I love that.
No financing contingency, no NBA approval contingency. And if something happens, I'll walk away and lose it. Okay, so that
with the previous owner.
Yeah, with the previous owner. Yeah.
Wow. No one else was going to do that.
Nobody else will do that.
And you were willing
that's the second time I've done that, and it worked for me, because my great casino in Lake Charles, right outside of Houston, I did the same thing.
$50 million, right? Or $40 million?
50 million. 50 million. Yeah. So it's worked for me twice. I hope I have the opportunity to do it again. That it's something I want that bad.
What is the things that people should be looking at? You mentioned people are looking at the wrong things. They're thinking about the price or the other things. What should they be thinking about if they want to acquire something? Whether you're a small business owner that wants to acquire something for $100,000, or you're a billionaire like yourself trying to acquire something for $2.2 billion, what is the thing they look for?
Well, if it's something that you really, really want and you can afford it and it doesn't really matter, you should just go get it. Okay.
Why? Is that for the peace of mind?
Just for the peace of mind, and so you never regret it. Okay. I can go back 20, 25 years ago, and I've been asked this the last few days. I had a chance to buy this unbelievable car collection about 25 years ago that had great muscle cars right when they were, it was unbelievable. Yeah. And I was really buying it at a bargain because the father had died, the son was selling it, didn't give a damn. Yeah. And I lost a deal over $200,000 that today, if I own that, I would just walk in there and say, this is mine. Yeah. I just love it. And I learned a lesson. And 25 years later, that's the one deal that comes back and haunts me, because I negotiated a little bit too hard for something that really mattered. Now, let's look at it in a box of a real business deal. You can't get caught up emotionally. There's always another deal. And I walk away from deals all the time.
Really?
All the time. Because there's always another deal. But you know what? there's only so many great car collections.
So many
There's only one
sports
NBA
teams.
team in your own hometown, okay? And so there's certain things you don't worry about. And that's where you have to be smart and say, there's always another casino to buy or another restaurant company to buy, but keep it right. Know what's in the box and know what's out of the box.
I don't think I'm the type of person that is brave enough to admit I've made a mistake, honestly, because I think things have not worked out along the way, where things just didn't work out as I had hoped or dreamed them to be. But I don't see them as a mistake, because as quick as you're thinking, oh, poor me, you start to see the light of the door that it's opening that couldn't have opened without it. Okay, so I don't have like a regret of this was a big mistake or that was a big mistake. But I have to also say I have my whole life been very cognizant of doing anything and exposing myself to anything, even when I didn't want to do it, because I'm deathly afraid of feeling like I would regret. Like, what if I don't do it? That's more of a motivation for me than doing.
Me too.
You know, just like, will I look back? You know, like for example, with Dancing with the Stars, I did not want to do it. I'm an old babe. The last thing I want to do is practice 4 hours a day.
You were great.
You think I was so great? Not the judges. They didn't think so. I was the #1 person on Dancing with the Stars last season. #1 rejected. Now there's a record, okay? But so you might say that was a mistake with all the work that led up to, and it was a social embarrassment. I thought I'd be rejected maybe #3 or 5 or 6, but #1 I never saw it coming. And so I was kind of a little mortified on that one. But you know what? I'm so thankful I did it, and the minute I recovered by the next morning, I'm like, thank God I did it, and thank God it's over. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Because I didn't want to, I said yes because I didn't want to wonder what it would have been like, you know? So
What did you learn from the experience about yourself?
I learned I'm not a good dancer. I swear, I've looked at the tapes now 1 year later when I thought, same tapes I looked at a year ago, I thought, you know, I really got this. But I look at them 1 year, I'm like, I'm stiff as a board. What was I thinking? Missing steps. So what I learned from that is that I can't dance well, but inside my body I feel like I'm a good dancer, and I'll get out on any dance floor and do my own makeup steps, and people really smile as I'm dancing because I don't really give a crap, and I look like it, you know. Yeah, but what did I learn? I learned that I learned the same lesson I learned again and again, which is thank God I did it. Thank God, and the injury of, oh God, you did so poorly, dissipates quickly, but there's an echo to not trying something that's going to sting you, I think. Not that I know that, because I really don't do that, but I'm afraid of it. It's like fear of a nightmare that might happen. I don't know why, because I don't really have that in my life, but I'm fearful of it.
Yeah, I think that'll sting you for a long time too. That fear of regret, of like, oh, I had the opportunity to do this Dancing with the Stars and I didn't do it. How many years would you think about not, you know, what?
Maybe a year, but still a bad year. You know what regret does, I think, and why I've been able to build up my personality and whatever I can get out of and give to life as best I could. What regret does is it quietly takes down your confidence a notch. Because in short, you were a coward. You shied away. Even if the right decision is to shy away. Once you shy away, you quietly, without even consciously thinking, think a little less of yourself. Now, I say that from experience because I've watched many people get stronger, or people where life makes them weaker. And there's a lot that goes into that. But I really believe that that regret piece is not given enough due. You really have to try everything and try your best, because and listen, 2 out of 3 things I try don't work out, you know, but people just remember the success. That's what I've learned. But I know what the failures are. But still, I got confidence out of failing each time. A little notch up, a little notch up. So then you conduct yourself with more power in life because you feel better about yourself. And ironically, you have more to give. You're a better package to give more because you've put a lot into that basket by just trying, you know?
Do you feel like you're more confident, even though you're the first one out of Dancing with the Stars, that you did it and you went for it?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I'm more confident. I got a lot of confidence out of that because every female friend and male friend I had that was even close to my age,
They were like, I
Okay?
can't believe you even went for it, right?
They said they discourage you, you're out of your mind, da, 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 but I won all their respect, and they constantly say, that was amazing, that was amazing. So even my friends that kind of took me for granted think better of me. I went up a notch in their head, you know.
It takes a lot of courage to do that.
It takes a lot of courage to publicly fail, but I happen to be very good at public failure.
Really?
Because I've done it my whole life, and that doesn't bother me. I think what I didn't want to happen was that I would look foolish or old dancing with a 24-year-old ripped stud on the floor until I realized it feels really good to lean in on that guy
there you
and let
go,
him
yeah.
spin you around that floor. And how many of my girlfriends were having to dance with anybody like that lately?
There you go. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
What would you say? Why are you not afraid to fail publicly?
Because the truth is that people, most of all, are thinking about themselves. So just when you think the limelight's on you and everybody's going to say, God, is she stupid? God, why would she say that or do that? The minute they've given you that one moment of attention, they're back onto their own problems, their own selves. So it's like overstatement of your ego to think you're really that important.
Right.
You know, you could just move right on. We could distract people. You try the next thing, their eyes on that if you're lucky. So no, it doesn't really amount to anything. It doesn't really amount to anything.
Right.
Yeah, it's self-ego that is not really true.
That's interesting because you say that most people are focused on themselves. So when you mess up publicly or you fail publicly, they'll think about it for a moment, but then they're on to their own thing.
If you're lucky and they notice.
If you're lucky, notice. Most people won't notice.
Yeah.
It just feels like everyone notices.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. It's
But
called
what about,
shame.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
What about when you want people to have the attention on you for the things you're doing good? How do you keep the attention on you, the relevancy of yourself as an entrepreneur, an individual, when people are focused on themselves so much? How do you keep them thinking about you, your brand, your business, your work, your mission?
You have to think of a way to grandstand. You know?
What do you mean by that?
Good old-fashioned grandstanding. Like I built my Corcoran Group brand on the backs of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post, without a doubt. I would think of all kinds of crap to get media attention, okay, as long as my brand name was in there.
Really?
The single best thing I thought of, which was really just an attempt to get publicity when I couldn't afford advertising because it was a bad market, was my Corcoran report. And all that was a one-page report giving the average sale price of apartments in Manhattan, is how I labeled it. I was too stupid to know that was a wrong label. It was just my 11 sales. But it was on the front page of the real estate section,
Really?
and I was quoted on the first line. And boy, that was an eye-opener. That's how I learned that publicity can build a brand. Today's version of publicity that I look for in all of the entrepreneurs I invest in is how good are you at social media? I don't care if you're in the sock business, if you're in hardware, or what's going on. How good are you at social media? What's your following? Those are the key questions now. How good are you at building attention through social media, because that's the new free ride. Not really free, but to a large degree free, just like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal were my free ride. Okay, so you have to be creative, I think, in thinking of how you can grandstand. And so what's like, I don't know, I'm thinking, what's a business right today? Like, well, I don't want to use Cousins. We already talked about Cousins. Like Grayson Lakes, which started out as a baby sock company. Phenomenal entrepreneurs I have.
Is this the long?
Lady stocking, yeah, with the little lace on top.
I bought some of those for a girl before, yeah.
And they make girls look sexy.
They make them look great.
And they're well priced and they're beautifully
Yeah,
made.
they're nice, they're elegant, they're sexy.
Well, now it's a full fashion line, and it's I think $17 million in sales this year.
Wow.
But what are they particularly good at? There's a husband and a wife team. Melissa, the wife of the team, has gorgeous long legs. You may remember her from Shark Tank. Her husband's more of a nuts and bolts guy, but great at business. What she does is she constantly models and talks directly to the camera. She has so many people that love her. She has limited editions. She sells out constantly. Wow. She's great at social media. She knows how to primp herself, look sexy, talk to the ladies, and get sales. Okay.
So she uses her assets, her skills.
But she does on social media, and that's built their entire business, social media.
Wow.
Yeah. And did I answer your question? Because I feel like I somehow got lost in my...
How do you stay relevant when things are going good? Because when your things are going bad, they'll look at you for a moment, maybe, where it seems like everyone's looking at you, but then they forget. How do you stay relevant while you're growing or while things are kind of going the same?
I'll give you another example. I have a company that I just bought in this past season. I was out of my mind to buy into them. It was two guys with a product called Comfy. It was a sweatshirt blanket. You slip into it, it's like a sweatshirt, but it's
think I
actually a
saw
blanket. Okay. Why I say I was crazy to buy into it, none of the sharks, they were smart enough not to, is because they're two loudmouth guys having a good time, pitching their product, and they had no inventory. They had handmade their own product. Two prototypes, had no idea what it would cost to make, what they'd sell for, who they'd sell to. They had none of the answers, but they're great salesmen. And I said, I'll take 15 or 40%, whatever I got of it, boom, just because they're great salespeople, all right? And what they have done is they've done in their first year $11 million in sales.
Wow.
They found a way to produce it and sell it. But a couple of weeks ago, it was very quiet. They have had social media coverage to the moon and back, but it was very quiet, and they hand-delivered, and I wish I could remember the famous actress name, sexy, cool, long-legged actress. I'm so bad with names. Whoever she was, I think she was the same actress who closed the Oscars the other night. I might be telling you
I didn't
wrong.
watch it. But
Shame
I
on
watched
you,
the
my
highlight
man.
videos,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
I was on a plane,
Oh,
so,
come on.
yeah.
All right. Well, anyway.
I saw your little watch party on Instagram.
Oh, so lonely, yeah. But anyway, they sent hand-delivered to her front door how they found it in Hollywood, the package, and she put on video her jumping on her bed in it. They, quicker than a second, started a social media campaign, people competing with the jumps. They're Johnny on the spot. That's smart business, okay? They're causing attention. They made it happen, and then they're going to write it again, and it's going to be all over social media, all over.
Yeah.
They're annoyed with me that I'm here because I don't have their product because they want me jumping on the beds. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put the hood on. I have one girlfriend that has gorgeous long legs.
you go.
I'm going to Photoshop my head in to her long legs, and I'm going to win the contest.
Perfect. I like that. So grandstanding now is like more influencer marketing. If you can find creative
Yes,
ways to
that's
find
a fancy
people
way to put it.
with an audience, maybe it's a micro audience or a large audience.
Or create an audience of your own one by one. But you really have to be able to grandstand.
Yeah. I know you talk about the keys to entrepreneurial success a lot, but for those who haven't heard you talk about it, what are you think some of the smart ideas in business right now, the smart industries to go into if someone's maybe talented, maybe they sold a company or they're trying to start as an entrepreneur? What's an industry you really like, a product section you really like? You know, is software, is it coaching, is it consulting, is it an agency, is it physical goods, food? What's the type of category you really think
You
is
know,
smart?
really none of the above. Okay, it's not my cup of tea to think of an industry that you can. There's certainly leading industries. I don't believe that's where your head should be if you're thinking of going into business. I think your head should be is what do you enjoy? What are you naturally inclined to be good at? What were you always good at? These abilities don't change much. Whatever you're, you know, if you're gregarious as a young kid, you generally don't wind up as a bookworm. You know, when you get older and get a head on your shoulders, you're still gregarious. So I think what you have to do is think, what would suit me? What could I visualize myself doing where I could picture a happy picture of myself, you know? And I think most people are capable of dreaming that up. I don't think it's an analytical kind of left brain kind of thing where you apply yourself to your best shot, like going and playing blackjack and putting your chips on the right thing. No, I think you have to figure out, you're the table. Where should you put your chips? What's on you? What's true to you, okay? And so for me, it took me 22 jobs to find real estate, but the minute I was out opening keys, you know, opening the doors and chatting people up, and it didn't feel like work, and I was the boss, I knew I was going to be the queen of New York real estate. I knew it as sure as I knew my middle name was Ann. I just could see it in my mind's eye. I never had that vision when I worked my other 22 jobs. And the other thing, it's sort of related to what you asked. I think it's such wrong thinking that you have to choose your spot. I think you find yourself little by little. It's very hard to sharpshoot. It's not that kind of a thing. Yeah. And you know, often the people, I know so many entrepreneurs well beyond or well before Shark Tank, peers of mine in many industries that have succeeded. No one ever went out for that industry. And so that's what I want to do. But you know what made the biggest difference in a myriad of those, if that's a word, a selection of those people, that made the biggest difference was they came along someone they worked for who believed in them. Getting one good boss that gives you an opportunity is worth 1,000,000 intellectual thoughts and Harvard MBAs grouped up in a pile. Because you kind of can sometimes need somebody else to see that light, or you get into something you never thought you'd be interested in and you really love your job. And then that winds up being what you do for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe that you name the big industries. That's more Mark Cuban stuff. He's like high level investment strategy stuff. But I'll put my businesses against his any day, 1-to-1. And because I think I'm so good at seeing who's got that talent that matches where they are, you know? Yeah.
If someone's approaching you for investment or to partner with you, and you could choose only 3 qualities that you would dream that they would have, whether that's never giving up, a grit, a positive energy, whatever the quality may be, and you could say if they had these 3 qualities, it doesn't matter what business they're in. Maybe timing and the economy might play a little bit of part here and there, but like if they had these 3 qualities, they're most likely, I would bet on them any day.
Yeah, well, that's what I do every day on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And I've gotten better at it because I've learned to hone in on those. I could think of 2. Maybe I'll come up with a 3rd if I keep talking. All right. Number 1 is salesmanship. I have never succeeded with any business where the principal didn't know how to sell. I mean, sales is the guts of every business. If you don't have sales, you're not in business. Any business applies to everything. So selling is number 1. The other thing I look for, and maybe it sounds weird to you, but I've learned it to be a great, almost insurance policy. I look for injury. I look for anger in the individual. If I could find someone, and this is true of all my successful business, interestingly enough, if I could find someone who had injury at an early age and has something to prove, I got myself a winner. It's like insurance, okay? So when I say injury, meaning they were dunce in school, like 3 out of 5 sharks were dunces at school. They're out to prove, you know. I don't want to out them, so I won't use. I'm inclined to use the names, but I won't. I have entrepreneurs, usually successful, who never had a father, and then when they went on Shark Tank, their father, after 35 years, was back into how insulting, enraged them. Okay, I have entrepreneurs who were sports figures, almost. Going to be professional sports people, had an injury, but were fiercely competitive with someone who wound up in their space. They hate that person because they played against them in ice hockey. Crazy. All I have to do is name the other person, their sales go up. You know? So I think anger and proving is very much part of a lot of successful stories out there. It's an overcompensation, overproving, overdriving, like I'll show you. Give me the I show you, something that went wrong earlier, and you've got a motivated person, and it gets you through hard times really well. And then I'm coming up with a 3rd. There's a million other ones, but none of them as serious as that. It's those 2. You have to be able to sell, and if you have injury, to prove something, it's a wonderful insurance policy.
How important is a positive attitude with those 2 things? Like
well,
if you were
that's a
negative,
given. Oh, you don't. Let me tell you.
I don't know.
You're
Just
not even
negative
going to get
people.
out of the gate. Well, there's negative people. All right. You know
You
what's.
might be trying to prove people wrong and always nasty about it. You know, it's
Forget
like,
it. Let me tell you what's true about a negative person. You won't meet them in the entrepreneurial space. You know why? Because they are far more comfortable criticizing the next guy than doing. Negative people are bloodsuckers. They just suck your energy away. You know, the nicest thing I did for all the people that work with me over the years was get rid of negative people the minute I spotted them. I didn't care if I had cause. They were out. You know why? Because it's like letting the enemy quietly into your camp and giving them free rein. Negative energy is the enemy of all business, especially I've always been in sales-related businesses. You let a negative person into a sales force, they have a pity party, all of a sudden they need one more person to feel sorry for them or to point out what's wrong. It's terrible. I would spot them a mile away, feel their vibe. Do you have a few minutes on Friday? I'd love to have a chat with you. Wow. Because I felt like I was saving my good people. Yeah. You know, they were good, positive people. I don't mean criticism. It's invaluable in business. You need to have your criticizers to let you know when you're off and what you could do better. But I'm just talking about regular bloodsuckers, you know. You know, everybody's met a few.
I hear you. I hear you. Now, sales is number 1 for you. If they were a great salesman, you would bet on them. If they were a great salesman with something to prove, That's like the golden ticket, it sounds like. So how does someone train to be a great salesman if they don't know how to? Is it something they can learn? Or is it something you just have to be a part of your energy?
Well, you had questioned about positive. That's the blood that goes through a great salesman. Seeing the positive side of anything. And a lot of people see that as baloney. I don't. It's just like, you show me a negative and I'll say, you know, you're right, it's a negative. But I can tell you what the upside of that negative is. So you have a bend toward being positive. So you must have that, okay, to be a salesman. If you don't, you'll never become a salesman. I don't care how hard you try. I think it's an intrinsic quality, a personality trait. I know you're not supposed to say that. Everybody's supposed to believe you could become a salesman. I think if you're inclined to be outgoing and positive, you can become a better salesperson. But the real phenomenal salespeople that I have worked with, and I've made my living my whole life in different venues with phenomenal salespeople, I am telling you, they come out of the gate, maybe not out of the womb, but they come out of the adolescent gate as salespeople. It's very hard to teach that. It's an artistic gift to be able to sell really well, because think of how complicated it is. You have to read the situation accurately. You have to read the person and think of how you could use them in the way that they want to use themselves, and thank you in a thank you note 12 hours later thinking it was their idea. That's a complicated little thing, right?
Can any type of creativity be learned over the years?
Yeah, so thank you so much for setting me up for this. Okay, number one, almost nobody is talented. Talent is completely overrated. I would argue that you were born with certain physical talents that enabled you to excel in sports that I could never have acquired no matter how hard I tried. Even that said, though, Larry Bird was not born with the kind of talent that Michael Jordan was. Larry Bird just grounded out and shot more practice shots than anybody else. That's a skill.
And hustled. Yeah.
Yeah, but the good kind of hustle.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it feels to me like talent is a betrayal. It is undermining all of the people who put all that work into skill. Don't call someone skillful talented, because they're not. They're skillful. So we can agree that playing the piano is a skill in the sense that if you work at it, you get better at it. But I would like to believe that being enthusiastic is a skill. And then so is being creative. It's a skill. You can get better at it. You can choose to put in the work in whatever form it takes. We're not talking about graphic art here, unless you want it to be graphic art, to gain the skill. And if that's true, that's really good news, because it means you're not stuck where you are. It means you can go to where you want to go. And it's really good news because skills can be acquired. And that fills me with optimism about so many things in our world. You know, we can point to the human condition and say, people are just doomed to hate each other and to undercut each other. But I can point to a culture where that's not happening. So how did that happen? Well, it's because it's a skill.
What are the three biggest skills you think all human beings should acquire, whether it be creativity or some type of attribute that to just make them better human beings, happier, more quote unquote successful, richer lives? With relationships, health, everything. What are those three skills, whether you're 20 or 60, what three skills should we acquire to live a better life?
I love this. Okay, how about this? Number one is the skill of possibility, of seeing that things could be better. Number two, the skill of empathy, practical empathy, of understanding people don't know what you know, don't want what you want, don't see what you see, that they have a noise in their head that's different than the noise in your head, and that's okay. And then the third one is the skill of learning how to learn, of being open to saying, I see possibility, I see people who need to be served who aren't who I am, and if I put enough into this, can figure out how to make a contribution. Those, I think, are three skills I can highlight.
Yeah, it's really just understanding emotional intelligence and people and stepping in other people's shoes and having compassion. Why did you choose those three skills over copywriting or
Well, I have
personal finance?
There's some
Yeah.
next level tactical ones, like decision making is a skill. And almost every Western human is terrible at it.
Why? Why are we terrible at it?
Because sunk costs are something that are probably hardwired into us. What a sunk cost means is the harder you worked to have something, the harder it is for you to give it up. And we see this mistake happen all the time. The example I'll give is pre-COVID, you've got 2 tickets to the movies, and they were really hard to get, and you told your girlfriend that you were going to go to the movies together. And on your way, you bump into a friend who says, I got 2 front row seats to see Hamilton. Do you want to go? That means your tickets are worthless. And a lot of people go, well, no, there's no well. It doesn't matter how much those tickets cost you. They're sunk. You already made that decision. You can't unmake it. And so we stick with a job longer than we should, or we stick to a way of thinking about the world longer than we should because it costs a lot. We went to law school, so now I have to be a lawyer. No, you don't. The law school degree is a gift from your former self. You don't have to take it. You could say no, thank you, and go do something that gives you joy instead. So sunk costs is a giant skill-based area. And then what goes right next to that is the skill of saying, that was a good idea, but I have a better one now.
Ooh.
And that takes practice.
Explain that. So I launched this idea and it started going and I built momentum for a few years, but now this is actually a better idea for the time or for my life or whatever. And so I'm going to let go of that thing and move into this.
Well, it's not, that's definitely true. That's sunk cost. But then beyond it, okay, I'm the boss and I built this organization and this is how we do our expense reports. But now we're going to do expense reports this way because it's better. But usually what happens is someone says that problem's solved. I don't have to revisit it. So if I think about the car industry said it took us 90 years to develop the internal combustion engine. That was a lot of cycles, a big sunk cost. And someone shows up and says, why don't we make electric cars? And you go, because internal combustion isn't broken. Because I can show you that if we look at an early electric car compared to a state-of-the-art Lexus, the state-of-the-art Lexus is better, not a problem. Whereas what would have transferred billions and billions of dollars of assets away from Elon Musk is if they had said, nope, you're right. We're just going to copy all the things you're doing that are working and make it even better. Because we have an improvement ratchet in place, a dealer network in place, we're trusted, we could go to the races. But senior executives making 7 figures said, nope, nothing could be better than this.
Yeah, I tell you what, I got a Tesla a few years ago, and it's hard for me to think I'd ever want to go back for a day-to-day car that's not electric. Personally,
But let's think about Tesla for a minute, because Tesla made a whole bunch of decisions a few years ago that they refused to reconsider, right? That the inside of the car should have no cup holders of a certain kind, that the inside of the car should have these things on the dashboard, but not these things, that the service needs. So they're as guilty of the same thing. They took a leap. They hired 1,000 people, and now they're stuck on their sunk costs.
Right. That's true. That's true. And they'll be stuck until they innovate or continue to open up. Why do we need reassurance? Why does it seem like a lot of people need this reassurance just every day? We need some type of reassurance. And why should we avoid reassurance?
So that's the second side. Reassurance is futile. Reassurance feels really good. Right? We get off,
doesn't it? It's like,
we get off this call, the phone's ringing, and Kai comes to you and says, hey, Lewis.
Great job.
It's Oprah. And Oprah was listening. She just wants you to know what a great job you did. Right? So you're flying for like 2 hours, maybe 3, and then you need to hear it from somebody else. Because what it means to get reassurance is that someone is telling you that the future is going to be okay. And it feels good because we would like the future to be okay. But deep down, we know that that person doesn't know that the future is going to be okay. So as soon as reassurance shows up, it reminds us that we are confronting an uncertain world and we want more of it. We want to be held safely. And it doesn't scale. You can't get enough of it. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to refuse reassurance.
So when someone says, you did a great job, Seth, it was amazing. That was the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life. How do we refuse that?
Well, the answer is thank you. I appreciate you being present and giving me that feedback. But it's reassurance if you then say, and your book launch is going to go great. Because that you can't know.
Yeah.
Right? That's the second half of, that's what's implied, is that I'm going to tell you about tomorrow. And what's the alternative? The alternative is to say, nobody knows about tomorrow. And looking for external validation that I'm going to catch that fish, that thing I am hoping for is going to work, that other people will get the joke. Not only doesn't it help me, it undermines my trust in myself. It undermines all of the things that I need to merely do the work. So, you've been seduced by, like me and everyone else, with the just do it thing from Nike. And the problem with the word just is that some people think it means, what the hell, do whatever you want, doesn't matter, just do it. And I think it should be changed to merely do it. Do it without commentary. Do it without drama. Simply show up and do the thing. Focus on the practice, not hoping and wishing for the outcome that you need to be reassured by, but the practice, the best you can do it. Because what could be better than the best you could do it? Nothing. So do that, learn from what works, and then do it again. But seeking reassurance is distracting you from doing a better job of what you set out to do in the first place.
I saw somewhere, I don't know if it was an article or video about Oprah talking about almost 100% of her guests, not everyone, but I think a lot of them at the end of the show would all say the same thing. And I think you know what I'm going to say. It's like, did I do okay? Was that good enough for you?
Yeah.
Did you like that? And it's this kind of reassurance mindset, right? Of like knowing that we got approval from the person who's interviewing us or working with us or our publisher. Were the numbers okay for you? Did the sales go okay? How do we gracefully remove that from our way of being moving forward so that we don't have to ask if we did an okay job, and we learn to just say, thank you so much for having me, or I'm grateful, and whatever else. How should we finish a project like that?
Well, I'm really afraid of the word should. I think should and shame go right next to each other. So I will just tell you that there are practices that you can engage in to help you insulate from feedback that isn't going to help. So here's an interesting story. A bunch of years ago, a famous electronics company did a focus group. The way focus groups work is you set up a trailer next to a shopping mall, you pay people some money, they come in for an hour, there's hidden glass windows, and the client can watch people touch the product. And they had a clock radio, and it had all these gizmos on it and everything else. And they got 8 people in there, and they're all looking at the clock radio, and they're all talking about how much they love the clock radio. And at the end, the organizer says, thank you so much. To thank you for being here, either you can get the $20 we promised you, or the $100 clock radio. Which would you prefer? And every single person took the $20.
Why?
Because that was the truth. That was the moment that they were actually telling the truth.
Oh, so they thought the clock wasn't as worth as much as the $20.
Yeah. And so what I have found is I got an ego as much as anybody, maybe more. I like it when the people around me say, you did a really good job. When Oprah says, that was good, for sure. But I want to see 3 years later, are people still talking about this idea? Or I just want to see in the afternoon after a blog post, did someone engage with it in a way that changed them when they didn't know that I would notice, right? Because it's not a performance in that moment. It's, did you have an impact? So if you go to Dia Beacon in upstate New York and watch what happens when people walk into a Richard Serra sculpture, which weighs 2 million pounds, I hope Richard has seen that happen, because that's genuine service. He made this. The curator doesn't matter. The dealer doesn't matter. This person had their breath taken away. That's what was supposed to happen, and it did. And so we play this game with everybody around us. do I look fat in this dress, et cetera, et cetera. And some of that is totally legitimate. It papers over our momentary insecurities, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes down to the practice and the art that we seek to make, I think it makes sense to surround ourselves with people who say, I respect you, you're on to something, you can do even better. And for us to start a cycle of what happened when this went into the world. Because when it's in the world and people had choices, what did I learn? How can I help a different group of people or this group of people make a different choice? And, in the workshops that I do, I get to watch all of it because I'm like up here and you can see all the interactions. That's different than looking at the test scores because you're watching how people are going back.
Yeah. I think I heard our good friend Gary Vee talking about how when he started in his dad's wine business, he would sit there and watch people walk through the store and say, okay, what if I move this way? And what if I put this in the front? Did people go and pick it up or did they walk right past it? Observing the results and the impact that you create on people, whether that's an experiential design or a physical design, whatever it may be. I'm curious. I'm going to try to be mindful of the word should. Is it more powerful for creatives to have goals and deadlines, or is that destructive to the creative process?
Right. So deadlines are a weird word because they have the word dead in them.
Finish lines are launch lines, whatever.
Yes. I am super disciplined about deadlines. I have never missed a deadline because I just decided that some people need that tension that comes from being 5 minutes late. I abhor that. I want to go nowhere near that. So for me, it's fuel. For other people, it might be turbo fuel because they need that 5 minute over thing. But there are other people who it completely destroys their work. So you got to figure out how do you engage with that. But goals is a different thing. So I was talking to somebody, I wish I could give them credit, who was explaining to me that goals are externally focused. And this is one of the things that led to me writing about it in the book. Meaning, if you say my goal is to be a millionaire, that isn't up to you. It's only partly from you. And the rest of it is luck. And so if you're going to say I'm a good person because I'm lucky and I'm a bad person because I'm unlucky, now you're really in trouble. Instead, what we need are practices that we call our thing, that thing we call our goal is I'm going to be the kind of person that ships this much work each day, that gets out of bed at this time, that manages their expenses so they're always 1/3 of, I mean, you can make a list of things that are completely under your control. Call those your goals and wipe out anything that involves fish, anything that involves something external happening that makes you feel lucky.
So I'm hearing you say focusing more on the things you can control daily, the habits,
Correct.
the practices, the actions, your energy, way of being, your compassion daily, as opposed to the end result.
Right. And let's get back to where we started, which is the reason people don't do that is because they don't want to hear from their other voice. They don't do that because they don't want to be on the hook. It is easier to catastrophize. It is easier to say I'm distracted. It is easier to say, oh, the world is way too whatever. All of those are external things that let you off the hook. And what I remember is I was born a year and a half before the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? The world is really in trouble in 2020, but the world was 10 minutes away from being gone in 1962. And so the question is, how did we get from that to Neil Armstrong walking on the moon 7 years later? We didn't do it by saying, well, we can't because Russia could end everything in any minute. We said, well, if Russia's going to end everything in any minute, we might as well send someone to the moon. And my friend Roz Zander helped me learn the difference between but and. So here we go. If you go on a long planned vacation and it's raining, you could say, I'm on vacation, but it's raining. Doesn't that suck? Or you could say, I'm on vacation and it's raining. And the and leaves room for you to say, so I can take a cooking lesson. so I could have some quiet time with my spouse, so I could figure out how to work for social justice. All of those things happened because it's raining. And so, yeah, it's raining right now. It's really bad. And you can do something. You can't fix everything, but you can make one person better.
What are the habits that you believe would support more creatives if they did these habits on a daily basis, from your 30 plus years of experience of what's worked for you and what you've seen other people you've studied do? What are those few habits you think could really help them further their inner happiness and hopefully accelerate the luck on the outside as well?
Yeah. So we have to not fool ourselves into getting hooked on the external. That we'll pretend we're not, but deep down we are. And so, Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche said, the bad news is we are falling and falling and falling. And the good news is there's nothing to hang on to. And as soon as you acknowledge that there's nothing to hang on to, it gets so much easier to fall.
You just let go and you don't have to keep trying to grab for something.
Right. And so it's the grabbing is the biggest thing. I write in the book a little bit about Julia Cameron's morning pages. Most people don't really understand how they work. You're not supposed to get up and write 3 pages of good prose. You're not supposed to get up and write 3 pages of interesting things. You're simply supposed to get up and write 3 pages, period, about anything. Junk, garbage, cruft, get it off your chest. Doesn't matter. Just put it down. Because as soon as you do, for the rest of the day, if you try to bring it up again, your subconscious says, I already wrote that down. I don't need to revisit that. It's taken care of. I wrote it down. I've discharged that. And so part of what it means to have a practice is the practice defines who you are. If you want to be a runner, the best thing to do is go run every day. If you run every day for 30 days, you're a runner. You don't have to subscribe to Runner's World. You don't have to have fancy equipment. You just have to run every day. If you want to be a writer, you have to write every day. And you don't have to show it to anybody. You simply have to do it. And not showing it to people lets you off the hook at some level, but at least you can see yourself as that kind of person. And then the step after that, which I'm a huge fan of, and the internet makes this easier than ever, is publish it anonymously. I think you should have a daily blog, but don't put your name on it. And after you've written 30 or 40 entries of your daily blog or made 5 or 6 episodes of your podcast, you're going to want to put your name on it. And then you can. But begin with, and if your name's not on it, it's so delicious because there's no upside and there's no downside. So you're simply doing it, and that's all you're going to get out of it, is that you did it.
Yeah. I want to ask you about money for a second, because I think it's a topic that a lot of creatives shy away from. And I think this will actually might be some of the most powerful stuff people hear is around the topic of money. You've been financially successful. You launched a business 30 years ago that you sold and exited. You've had, many hits in your books and businesses. You've made money as a creative. It's fair to say that. What should creatives be thinking about in terms of what if they want to create great work, but also they want to be rich? They want to make millions. They want to, for the heck of it, to support their family, their lifestyle. They want to make money.
Yeah.
What should they be thinking about in terms of art and money and marrying the both without it feeling bad or icky or I'm selling myself in a bad way to make money? How can they approach it mentally so that it doesn't cripple them, but they achieve the results they want?
My answer may surprise some people, but here we go. The odds that you will make a lot of money doing exactly what you want are 0 to a rounding error, 0. It is possible to make a lot of money. It is easier now for people of privilege to do it than most any other time in history because of the network effect, because of the power of software, because of tools that give you reach to millions of people. The way you make a lot of money is you figure out what people with money want to spend that money on to solve their problem now. And you go solve that problem. And then over time, you amplify their need and you let them do it again. That is how everybody, with few exceptions, who has made a lot of money has done it. Those people don't get to say, oh, but I also have this idea and I need to express it because I think it's generous. Those are different things. And only in the last 100 years has it even been conceivable that you could get paid money to do what you love. This is a brand new idea. So I am in favor of doing what you love and charging for it if you can, because it holds you responsible, puts you on the hook, creating tension, serving people you want to serve. And maybe you'll get paid a little bit. But if you want to make a lot of money, listen to the market.
I think it's really cool when you meet someone who's had a lot of experience in life, made so many mistakes, had a lot of success, failures over 20, 30 years now of you doing
over
business,
30, yeah.
and says, you know what, I want to take this information and simplify it and teach people how I did it. And I think that's it's inspiring when you meet someone who's done it.
Yeah.
And then it's more inspiring when you meet
Same
someone
here.
who's done it and then tries to help others do it.
Well, for me, and the thing is, I mean, at this phase of my life, I appreciate you saying that, brother, because it's what saved my life. Like if I look at I've been blessed. I did well in real estate in my 20s, started with no money. That's really was my momentum. And I've written multiple New York Times bestselling books and all this stuff and failed miserably in between. But if I look back, what really saved my life was learning from other people. And at this time, how could I not want to give that back? It's what changes the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to talk about it today because it's such a part of who I am and what Tony Robbins and I are doing right now. But at the end of the day, self-education is what saved all of us. I mean, this is what you give back to the world, man. I'm so proud of what you do and to expose yourself to the world and bring on other people and deliver that value to people. It's a really noble thing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I do know a little bit because we talked about it. But in high school, my guidance counselor, I mean, legit sat me down. I wasn't taking my SATs. I knew I wasn't going to college. And she looked at me and she was just like, no, you're not? Are you sure? And I said, yeah. And so it went from no college, like that was going to be perfect. And I'm not saying college is bad for everybody, but like it was either, heaven's open and the sunbeams come through, right? And the angels sing. Or she's like, oh, no college. Well, maybe you could work with your dad fixing cars. She knew my dad didn't make a lot of money. Or go apply at the only factory in town for minimum wage. That was the two options she gave me, right? So how many people are there out there right now that if the regular path's not working, they think there's no other path, or go working at a gas station? And I'm not knocking if you work at a gas station. I'm just saying that's the way my supposed guidance counselor looked. And what saved me was the third option that I didn't know existed until I knew, was self-education, learning from other people. I found a couple older people in my town. I became friends with them.
Like
I saw
mentors,
that, like they became mentors. And then I bought Tony Robbins' course, and then Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle, and I started going down this path. I'm like, oh my God, and it changed my life. So I owe such a debt of gratitude to self-education. So it's a pleasure to give it back. And
if you didn't have mentors and you didn't have books or places you could learn information, where do you think you'd be?
I'd still be working on cars. I mean, that's just a true story. And here's the thing, what's cool now is why the world has changed. So I'm not a gazillion years old, but being 51 right now, if I look back when I was in my 20s and wanted to do more. So I had dyslexia.
51? You
51.
look 40, man.
What's that?
You
Yeah,
look
thank
40.
you. I'll take that. Well, my wife makes me look young, so that's really good. But in my 20s, I knew there was more. I was going after. I was a hustler. Hands down, I was a hustler. I was running away from a broke, painful, young, lifestyle. When I was young, I didn't like that lifestyle. I was running away from it. So I was working hard. Yeah. And when I wanted to find a mentor, there was no podcast. I couldn't go listen to Lewis Howes.
Right. No YouTube shows.
There was no YouTube shows. There was no Instagram. There was no Facebook. And I had dyslexia really bad, so I hated reading. There was no audiobooks. Right. So back then, it was like, if you don't find a mentor and you're not good at reading, you're screwed, right? So I was lucky enough to watch an infomercial. Everybody asked me, why'd you go in the infomercial business 20 years ago? Because I watched an infomercial. Tony Robbins took my money. He gave me information. It changed my life. I'm like, I want to do that. So that's why I went in that business. So if I wasn't lucky enough to be up late one night and watch Tony's infomercial and then go down this path of like, holy crap, there's people out there that get good at something and then they extract it and share it. Like I cut them a check and they give me knowledge. Once I understood that you could pay for speed, game changer for life. And then I got obsessed. I'm obsessed on it. Masterminds is something I do on a regular basis. We own mastermind.com. We're teaching the world how to do masterminds and extract what they know because it's the biggest needle mover there is.
It's funny you said that, paying for speed, because in football, the saying is, you can't teach speed.
Oh,
And
got it.
You'll find guys that run the 4.3 and the 40, but have horrible hands because you can teach them the other stuff.
Got it.
Speed is the thing you can't teach in sports. You either kind of got it, you can get to a certain point, but it's hard to really get past that, the next point.
Yeah.
But in business or in life, you can teach speed.
Yeah, it's the ultimate unfair advantage. It's
Yeah.
like, it's this thing that lives out there, and the people that know about it are the ones that are doing better and they're going faster, and you don't know why. Right? It's like two people own a restaurant across the street from each other. One's killing it, one's not. Guaranteed, one's in masterminds, or one's learning from somebody, or one has a mentor, or one goes to a live event, or has a coach, and the other one's trying to figure out through trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what we have as options to learn to go faster, whether that's, you want to make more money to give it all away, you want to make more of an impact, you finally want to start that business you have, or your business is doing okay, but you know there's that next level. Like you see the person next door, like they're doing it. There's a couple ways to get there. You go back to school, kind of the traditional path, and we could talk about that. It's just an antiquated system. It's not working anymore. It's not delivering what people need. It did at one point, but it hasn't evolved. And people know that. That's why there's a huge exodus from college right now.
Right.
Or we have trial and error. You figure it out on your own, and that can be the most costly, time-consuming.
costly.
And besides time-consuming and costly, the worst thing about trial and error is everybody has a threshold where they finally get to a point and give up and go back to what they knew. Right? It's like you're trying, I'll pay the bills over here, but I'm trying, the business is doing okay, I'm trying, it's like, it's not working, I'll go back. And then
give up.
And there's a certain point in life where people just try, and then they hit this flat spot and they coast forever. Like they don't die till they're 100, but really at 37, they gave up and they weren't growing, right? But what most people are missing is this whole other world of self-education, right? Whatever it is you want to do. You want to learn, my wife is the #1 hairstylist in Arizona for the last 8 years. You want to learn how to do extensions and have make 10 times more than the average hairstylist. You could try to figure it out. You can go to cosmetology school and then go work for somebody. You could do it trial and error, or you could spend a weekend with my wife and make several $100,000 rather than the $28,000 that's the norm. Like, just using that as an example, but it's every niche that exists in the world. If you're starting off at day one, there's somebody out there that's got 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and if you can extract what they know, decades into days, kind of Tony Robbins always says that, you get to start off where they left off.
So I'm curious, you're 51 years young now.
Yeah.
You've been through lots of different business growth, failures, successes, different things. You've had lots of money, you've lost some money, you've made more money. You are married, divorced, new marriage. You have kids from a previous marriage. You've got a kid coming in a new marriage.
Yeah.
What's the greatest lesson you've learned in the last, since you turned 50, about intimate relationships that have applied towards business relationships?
Yeah, great question. And I have especially because of our relationship, I have no problem sharing this.
I know you typically wouldn't talk about this.
But it's a really good question because, again, not to go back to Tony, but he's my dear friend. And when I was 48, he said to me something that no one ever asked. He said, who are you going to become in your 50s? Because everybody always talks about what you're going to accomplish. And he said that, and it kind of sticks in my head. And, who I've become in a relationship that's related to business, empathy is probably the biggest word, compassion. And there's a time where I wasn't sure, like, I think empathy or compassion could seem like weakness, right? And what I realize now that I know this sounds crazy, but maybe to some people, not to most, especially people who listen to you, but love's the answer to everything. It really is. Like, when you love your business, when you love your employees, when you love the impact you're making on people, when you love your wife, when you love your kids, it's an easy word to throw out there. But when you truly understand it on the other side of all the craziness that we've tried to figure out what love is, it changes the game. Yeah. And listen, I'm gonna back up here. Because you threw me for a loop, and I want to give listen. If people are gonna spend time with us today, there's a million podcasts they can be listening to. They're listening to you. I want this to be one that, like, holy crap! I'm so glad I listened to Lewis and Dean. But I want to break down something. Might be a little different than your question, but the difference between men and women, and why I think you asked me this question, so I'm going down this road. Why I think 2020 is the start and the year of the woman entrepreneur. Of the woman's success. And this is what I learned from my wife, so it'll tie back to your question. And I say that because, and I might not be politically correct, and I'm not perfect, if I say this wrong, I apologize, but the balance between women's opportunities and men's wasn't always where it should be. Let's just face it, right? It was stacked in our favor. But I think we're getting closer. Maybe it needs a lot more evolution, but I think it's closer. We can both agree it's closer now than ever before in history, right? And I think women finally, it's not that they don't need permission. I think it's a time where women who have more empathy, just born with it, more compassion, and I think more instinct than men. Right? I don't know about you, but if you're listening right now, ask your husband, or you have your wife, or your grandmother, or your mother, or your sister. Has there ever been a time you brought somebody around and your wife or girlfriend said to you, I don't think he's a good guy, don't do business.
She says this to me all the time.
And you're like, no, he's good. And what happens 6 months later? You're like,
You
hey
realize.
babe, that guy wasn't
You're
so good.
You're right.
Like, their instinct is unbelievable. Their empathy and compassion is unbelievable, right? So, and this ties back to the guys too. But if you think about that, for those years, a lot of times that was used in relationships. It was used for their children. Now it's being used for the world. And simultaneously, we're in a place in society where we're so done with the get rich overnight, get skinny overnight, fall in love overnight, intimacy in 2 seconds, read this book. Like, we want real so bad. So I think we're at this point where the playing field is more level. And the innate abilities that women have is what the world is craving. That's why even in the program Tony and I have, it's more women than men crushing it.
Really?
We're about 57% women just destroying it, like making such an impact on the world because they tend to be more just real and genuine. Where a lot of times with guys, we're aggressive. We go in, we start selling before we kind of know. We want to make a change before we really understand it. So with that said, being in a relationship where I made mistakes in the past in a relationship, my relationship ended, I'll take just as much responsibility as my ex, and I needed to grow. But when I ended that relationship, instead of thinking, I need to find a better woman, someone who, fits me, and I was lucky enough to see that I needed to become a better man.
Wow.
And I worked a lot on myself. And when I decided, and I wrote down on a piece of paper, the only relationship I would accept, I found my wife. And we're 3 years in. It's the best relationship in my life. We fall more in love every day. But you asked me that question, going through the pain of a divorce, which was mostly painful because of my kids. My ex and I knew our relationship was done years ago, but I went through a divorce in my childhood. My parents went through a bunch of divorces. So I didn't want to put that on them. But going through that pain was actually the greatest thing, because on the other side, just if you're starting a business, in a relationship, trying to lose weight, like the pain of going through it made me realize I had to become better, and I was able to attract the greatest love of my life. And then now that I look at her with this love and admiration, and I respect her so much, that when I see her empathy, when I see her instinct, I trust it on a level I never did before. Then I take those lessons, I push them back out to the world, I put them in my courses, I share it on my podcast, and all of a sudden people are like, I don't know about this new version of you, Dean, but I love it. I see it in you.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Everybody's like, this new version of you, and it's not just love. Love is amazing, but it's love and respecting what I see in her, and when I give it to the world, I see everything lift, right?
What's the keys to deepening your relationship in a intimate relationship, long-term relationship, marriage, and falling more in love with the person or the relationship that you can also translate into business as well?
Yeah,
Like, how do you do it in your relationship and your marriage now?
So I would say,
because it didn't work before,
right,
and now it is working.
Just so you said, a couple years in, looking for the next business, that's how I felt in last relationships. I'll be transparent and say that to you. And it's the complete opposite now. Because I had enough of that pain to realize that doesn't lead anywhere. So that's probably time on this earth to realize that there's never a time where I said, oh, this is so great. It's like you look back and you're like, that was just dumb. It was a dumb decision. Like, I was always searching for, say, the perfect business when I needed to be the perfect business owner, right? So if you're dabbling and saying, oh, should I work on Shopify? Should I write a book? Should I create a course? Should I do masterminds? Sometimes we're looking for the outside thing to make it great when really it's us. And so I think that's time on this earth, and I know I had to go deep inside. The second thing, just like a business, is burn the boats. Like, I never burned the boat. I always left one boat in the harbor. You know what I mean?
A few boats here and there.
You know, with the engine running, right? This relationship is so magical to me. And let me back up. When I said this is what I must have in a relationship, and this is what I can't accept in a relationship, and I found that, and I found this connection, I found this love, I burned the boats. And I also did I think they use this in like 12-step program, but I did like fantasy contamination. Like the way I love this woman, I say this because she's here in the room with us right now, there's nothing I can compare that would want me to compromise that love. When she walks in a room, the only man she looks at is me. I screw that up once, she might still be with me, but what if she didn't look at me that way? What if she didn't love me on that level? So I think through, okay, what if I even just flirted with this girl? What if I just text back to a girl that hit me up just to say hi? I'm like, what if she saw that? And then the next time she looked at me, it just didn't have that luster. So I think of that and I contaminate all of it and I burn the boats and there's zero options.
Wow. What do you call it? Fantasy contamination?
Fantasy contamination. I heard it someplace, so I'm just going with it.
Right.
But I do because, and none of them have ever would be more rewarding than this. So burn the boats. First off, you know, make sure you're in the right relationship. Burn the boats. Stay in your swimming lane. And proximity. That's a great one. That was great advice I got from somebody, is proximity. Like I used to travel all the time, do events, thousands of people, and always be alone. Always, always, always. And the truth is, not that I have any temptation, but I don't want to be alone. I want to grow with my woman. So there's everything I do. And I mean, she's sitting with me now. If I'm on stage, there's 8,000. We just did an event with 8,000 women, Rachel Hollis's event. When I got the audience going crazy, cheering, clapping. They're waiting in line to do it. When I look over, I'm at my wife right there. And that's my woman. That's my everything. And when I'm on stage, when I'm on a podcast, I am not. Before, in previous relationships, I barely talked about my relationships.
Right. I don't think I ever heard you talk
No,
about
I never did. There's not a time I'm on stage, I'm out in public, and here's this crazy thing, and you know this with your business, and take it back for your business. The more you talk about something,
with
the more
excitement, with
but
love.
you don't just anchor it into the world, you anchor it into yourself.
Yeah.
So with my team, my office, you know, we have 70 people in my team. Every day, Lewis, I talk about how we're changing lives. We're making self-education the new norm. It's our responsibility to create an alternative to the education system. Our clients aren't leads. They're not somebody you just sell. These are human beings and they're putting their faith in us to help change your life. This is a responsibility. We get to change lives for a living. I say it so much that I know when people first start working, they're like, oh, this guy Dean, I hear it. But you give it 6 months, I walk in like, Dean, we changed 2,700 lives this month. Because it became part of it, because it's what I spoke out to the world.
When 2020 happened, we started printing more money and injecting this into the stock market, into corporations, and into people in the form of stimulus checks and unemployment. So what did that do? Well, in 2020, we saw the fastest and most severe stock market crash in history.